We're live.
Well, welcome everyone. Bienvenidos, bonjour. And I could not be more thrilled to be with you today for our new books showcase here on Cultivating Voices Live Poetry, where we've also today added in a special bonus feature because today is our 1-year anniversary of Cultivating Voices Live Poetry. We began our first show on Sunday, March 29th. So we're just a day calendar-wise off, but it was a Sunday on March 29th that we hosted our very first reading on Facebook. And today, as we continue, we're 1 year out from the pandemic. We join together here on this cusp of spring for our new book showcase that has become a very, very popular feature of the program that we alternate weekly with our live poetry open mic. I want to also wish everybody celebrating Passover, my greetings to you. And I could not be, again, happier to be joining you today on this Sunday. I'm your host, I'm Sandy Yannone. I'm the author of Boats for Women from Salmon Poetry. And today I'm joining you back in my kitchen in Olympia, Washington. I've been for the past 4 months in Old Saybrook, Connecticut, and I just flew back yesterday to join you all live here in Olympia for today's very special reading. You know, a year ago, I made a video invite to start Cultivating Voices Live Poetry. And that video still exists on Facebook, on our event page. You can go see it if you care to. I was in a field outside of Missoula, Montana, where I had been stranded. And I read the entire introduction to the Life of Poetry by Muriel Rukeyser. I thought it would be particularly appropriate today to just read an excerpt from the Life of Poetry to remind us, why we started the program, why Sister Elizabeth Ann and I started the program, and welcomed all of you by sharing what I used to invite all of you to join this group back in March of 2020, as we were just beginning our shut-ins and lockdowns, whatever the language is that your particular countries use to describe what we were facing and still continue to face with the pandemic. So this is Muriel Rukeyser's from her book, The Life of Poetry, written in 1949. If you were to read it in its entirety, you would think it was written yesterday. I want to give a shout out to one of our members, Jan Freeman, who is the founding editor of Paris Press. And she started Paris Press over 25 years ago. It's now part of Wesleyan University Press, but she started Paris Press just so she could put Muriel Rukeyser's book, The Life of Poetry, back into print. So this is from the introduction. In time of crisis, we summon our strength. Then, if we are lucky, we are able to call every resource, every forgotten image that can leap to our quickening, every memory that can make us know our power. And this luck is more than it seems to be. It depends on the long preparation of the self to be used. In time of the crisis of the spirit, we are aware of all our need for each other and our need for ourselves. We call up with all the strength of summoning we have our fullness, and then we turn, for it is a turning that we have prepared, and act. The time of the turning may be very long. It may hardly exist. I think now of a boat on which I sailed away from the beginning of a war. It was nighttime, and over the deep, fertile sea of night, the voices of people talking quietly, some lights of the seacoast far away, some stars. I did not know it then, but we spoke as if we were shadows on that deck, shadows cast backward by some future fire or explosion. We were on a small ship, 5 times past our capacity in refugees, sailing for the first port of peace. On the deck that night, people talked quietly about what they had just seen and what it might mean to the world. The acute scenes were still on our eyes, immediate and clear in their passion. And there were moments too, in which we were outsiders and could draw away as if we were in a plane and rose far to a high focus above that coast, those cities, and this sea, with sight and feelings sharper than before. Everything we had heard, some of all we loved and feared, had begun to be acted out. Our realization was fresh and young. We had seen the parts of our lives in a new arrangement. There were long pauses between those broken images of life spoken in language after language. Suddenly, throwing his question into talk, not at all leading up to it, not seeming to, a man, a printer, several times a refugee asked, "And poetry? Among all this, where is there a place for poetry?" Then I began to say what I believe. I feel like for the past year, every week, we've come together to say what we believe. And that has never been more evident than in our new books showcase readings with our poets sharing their newest work, whether their debut collection or whether their 20th collection and everything in between. Well, it is my great, great joy today to welcome 4 poets whose books have emerged at different time periods for different reasons and represent that kind of full spectrum of the need to summon strength and power that Rukeyser spoke about during the pandemic and during just everyday life. Well, I will introduce each poet before they read, and then we will move on to our live open mic celebrating our 1-year anniversary. Well, first reading today is Anne Tweedy. And again, Anne was an early member of Cultivating Voices Live Poetry, read on those iconic now Facebook Live readings, and has joined us at some of our special events reading in the National Coming Out Day Poetry March. And it's been a great privilege and pleasure to be also going to her events during the year where she's talked about the connections between poetry, law, and social justice. Anne Tweedy's first full book collection, The Body's Alphabet, was published by Headmistress Press in 2016, and it earned a Bisexual Book Award and was a finalist for a Lambda Literary Award and a Golden Crown Literary Society Award. Anne also has published 3 chapbooks, and she has been nominated twice each for Pushcart Prizes and Best of the Net Awards. She currently serves as a law professor, specializing in the laws relating to Native American tribes. And certainly you will want to read more about Anne, as well as her poetry, on her website. Would you please welcome Anne Tweedy?
Thank you so much, Sandy. I'm thrilled to be here reading with Atracta, Debbie, and Michelle, and just really grateful to Sandy and Dawn and Kim and Elizabeth Ann for making this space for all of us, which is just a beautiful, beautiful thing. And I just feel the energy as soon as I sign on. And I also want to acknowledge that I'm here in Vermilion, South Dakota, on the unceded land of the Santee tribe, the Ponca tribe, Omaha and Yankton tribes. So I thought I have two chapbooks, and so I thought I would read a few. Both came out in 2020. A couple poems, or a registry of survival is prose poems and hybrid work. So I'll read a couple prose poems and a poem from a registry of survival, and then a couple pieces from Beleaguered Oases, the other chapbook that came out in 2020. So this first one is more of a prose poem. It's called Primal Scream. When I was 5 or so, my mother saw the primal scream as a way to cope. She talked about getting a person-sized wooden box to go inside and scream in. In my imagination now, the box looks like a coffin, but maybe it was more like a small closet. Since we never had much money, she just went up into the half-finished attic and screamed, "Sans box." "The police will come," my father said, and I felt a mix of apprehension and interest. What would it be like to be questioned by police to try to explain that there was no emergency? Would they believe us? I didn't worry about the ripple effects of neighbors seeing the police, though I'm sure my father did. But I was curious, was he right? Would they come? But they never did, or at least not then. Now I'm learning more that John and Yoko both tried and liked the primal scream in the early 70s. Steve Jobs took a brief gander as well. The therapist and author Juan Janov has since been largely discredited. The therapy went on longer than he posited and didn't suck the childhood trauma out of most patients, as promised. You could say a lot about my mother in those days. She was susceptible to expert crackpots, no doubt. The trauma she noticed was usually inside her. Her only child, I was either indistinguishable from her or aligned with evil forces. But now she won't take medications for fear of deadly side effects, and she can't trust a psychiatrist for more than a few weeks. After that, they start selling her confidences or plotting to kill her. I look back and think of her then, a person with hope. And I thought I would read, and so this chapbook is about my mom's struggles with homelessness and mental illness. And my relationship to her. So here's one, more of a typical poem going back to when I was a child, called Childhood. My mother wants to protect me from the ghosts of illnesses no one else can see. She finds doctors to believe her: brain damage, motor impairment, failure to listen, allergies, and later, when my arm sears and popcorn oil, the not wanting to rise from the couch, the thought that shut eyes might erase it. But illnesses become insufficiently voracious. People materialize with designs on my developing body. The police imagine her taking me 33 miles to the city to sell me, and she decides I should no longer leave the house because they plan to rape me, drags me at 12 to a gynecological exam in the hope that documented virginity will bulwark bulwark me. The hesitant doctor suggests before he begins, maybe I've already had partners, his kind, uncertain attempt to toss out a lifeline. Then proof in hand, but nothing satisfies the terrible hammer taps of her worry. And I thought I'd just read one more from this chapbook and then move on to the other ones, quite different and a little bit lighter, I would say. So this is another prose poem type of work called Rental Property. When my mother was evicted from public housing, I was in my 40s, living 1,500 miles away, but it felt like it was happening to me. Did I have bad boundaries, or had I never gotten over my childhood fear that she and I would lose the house we lived in because she didn't pay the bills? Maybe both. I was teaching property when she was evicted for hoarding, and it happened during a time I was teaching landlord-tenant law. Bitterly funny. I thought the eviction violated the Fair Housing Act. She has an obvious disability, but her legal services lawyer wouldn't raise the objection. The lawyer thought it wouldn't be fair to the other side, the town housing authority, which had, quote, bent over backwards. So I tried to get a reasonable accommodation request in as a family member, but I don't know if the judge read it. And anyway, she was evicted. And the social worker assigned to help her started up on some tough love bullshit, arguing that my mother wasn't cooperating because she wasn't at her apartment when the social worker arrived a few minutes early for an appointment. My mother had stepped out to do laundry, so she wouldn't support my request for my mother to have more time in the apartment before leaving, which meant the other side wouldn't agree to it. I got the news that the eviction went through right before teaching my property class, and I tried very hard not to cry, standing at the front of the big law school lecture hall. Later, the minister who had helped clean out the apartment for my mother got her committed, concerned that she had the body of her dead cat and an empty refrigerator. She told me once when I was a child and asked her that she didn't know if she loved me or the cat more, which is a clear answer to the question. She loved the cat more. I don't know why children ask such questions. Now, when my own son asks them, do you love me more than the cats? Do you love me more than blank? I know the answer. The answer is always yes. You only have to hear, I don't know once to know to say yes to that sort of question forever after. Yes, 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 without any hesitation, without stopping to think about it. Thanks, everyone. So I'll read for my last few minutes from Beleaguered Oases, which has a mix of nature poems and relationship poems. So this one is called Fruit. Think of how the body labors day in, day out. It does its difficult work. Take, for instance, the man who tucked himself against the underbelly of a plane to get out of Cuba. His body fought to keep warm in the frigid reaches. Most hearts would have stopped, but his pumped his arteries all those cold miles, saying, go on, saying, I'll do this work now, undaunted by tomorrow. In my yard, a birdhouse sat atop a pole. A pair of chickadees squeezed their plump bodies in and out of the small hole. One afternoon, we found the birdhouse lying on the ground. With no nest in sight, my husband propped it on the base. A few days later, it fell again. This time, a small rectangular nest sat upright in the grass. Inside, 4 speckled eggs, scarcely larger than jelly beans. This time, after setting the nest in place, we tied the house back on. Every day since, I've looked for the chickadees, thinking how the body of the female used every whit of excess vitamins and protein, of high-strung bird energy wrested from flying and seed gathering, to form the tiny eggs her magnum stretched to accommodate. Meanwhile, she and her mate gathered and pulled wisps of straw, moss, and dry plant stems to thread together a shelter. At last, her vagina squeezed out the eggs and her whole body vigorously warmed them, all on a chance, the same thin chance we all reach for. Thank you. And I'll just read two more. This one is called Beleaguered Oases, so it's the title poem for this chapbook, which is from Seven Kitchens Press. Beleaguered Oases. 1. Sometimes passing through desert, I'm startled by lakes like Tool and Indian Tom along California's top edge. White pelicans float afloat like sturdy, self-contained steamers. Yellow-headed blackbirds calling from wide-legged stances on shore rocks. Also redwings, gadwalls, Canada geese with fuzzy, near-grown young in tow congregate in these oases ringed by slim layers of cattails, lush marsh grass, then huge swaths of sagebrush set up against dusty buttes that only up close show patches of dry grass breaking up their sand dune smoothness. Now and then a bright sprinkler-fed field dots the land, sometimes stacked with alfalfa. Coming upon each lake, the heart lightens, letting go of some tension it was carrying, secretly perhaps having feared the dry landscape. Or maybe it simply rides the arc of bird sound, duck murmurs and blackbird songs like bagpipe notes, mixing with the calls of terns and grebes to stew an ecstatic cacophony, something like a jungle must be. But there's a way too in which tenuousness and rarity sharpen beauty, bring our blurry, distracted glimpses into focus. 2. Downhill road across from Tool Lake, farmers flank their houses with signs, simple, black on white, letters rough. Honor your oath, people before fish, a new endangered species, Tool Lake farmers, and set against a tractor writ large, adoption, a life without regret. As with any colonists, one can say they don't belong. But what of these homesteading families who poured generations of effort into drawing horseradish or potatoes out of alkaline soil at the urging of a government that saw desert as waste? Once a bankrupt policy enroots itself and successive generations of Stauntons and Schaffners through decades of early morning labor and isolated roadless winters or the more daring and desperate winter drives along train tracks, can logic still hold forth about the quixoticness of farming desert, about how endangered lost river suckers need the irrigation water because it fuels the marsh that shelters them from pelicans, or how some of the last colonies of those same white pelicans will desert their young if farmers drain their nesting grounds, opening their brooding and rearing to coyotes? Does it matter anymore who had the water first? Tell me we can overcome the tragedy that no home feels as real as our own. And do I have time for one more, Cindy? Okay, great. So I'll close with a relationship poem. And thanks again, everyone, for listening. So this is called Kilter. When the days line up flat, one after another in front of me, and I feel like a traveling salesman whose territory is the wide, plowed, sectioned off Midwest, contiguous squares and rectangles chopped into rows and columns, as orderly as abacuses, never off kilter for even a minute. Thinking of your body saves me. I think of how we fit together, your slopes and my angles, irregular, messy perfection. I think of your oblong breasts, the left smaller than the right, how your resistant nipples harden finely between my rubbing fingers or against the insistent beat of my tongue, taut moments when my body understands rhythm and teases and trains your pleasure to the song that we're writing together. I think of the faint, acrid smell of your smooth, slightly tan skin, the smell that clings to the strands of your armpit hair, strongest when I rest my head half against your large upper arm and half against your chest, of how resting there both stirs me and puts me at ease, sensations the female body alone can synchronize. I think of the way, sitting up, you examine my body lying on the bed, marveled by my collarbone or the new leaves of shoulder muscle or the jut of my pelvis like the current scoured stone you palmed before we met. And I remember how your eyes drink me with the slow lap of an animal accustomed to abundance, your eyes that look and still each morning see me new. And then all the coming hours begin to breathe that promise too. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anne. Wow, what a reading, and that final poem. I'm glad I said yes to the final poem. Folks, you know me. I rarely turn a poem down. But I have to keep us on time today, and it's hard because I want to hear everything. And well, Anne's been with us since the first weeks of Cultivating Voices live poetry, and I look forward to more poetry from you in our programs as the year progresses. Congratulations on your new book. And folks, of course, check out where to purchase books as Kim is posting them in the chat. And if you have the resources, I truly encourage you to buy at least one book today, if not many. We're going to move us to our next reader, who read in, I believe it was our second live open mic, coming from Missoula, Montana. So it's really a thrill to have Michelle Parker Randall back with us on the program, now celebrating her new book. And I met Michelle for the very first time at AWP, just in those weeks before Cultivating Voices live poetry began, which we never knew would begin. And I guess there is always a bit now of before and after, that game of before and after now. And of course, that was a great AWP, because it was a very intimate one where you would meet people that, and you'd hang out with people that you wouldn't normally have the kind of space and time to meet and hang out with, because it's usually so chaotic at the conference. I'm talking about the Associated Writing Programs Conference in North America. That's the largest writing conference in the country for fiction, nonfiction, poets, and teachers of creative writing. So without further ado, here is Michelle's bio for you all. And with, again, a great welcome back to you, Michelle. Michelle Parker Randall is the author of Museum of Everyday Life from Kelsey Books, 2015. And her latest is A Future Unmappable from Finishing Line Press, 2020, which is about the lives of neurodivergent and their caregivers. Her work has appeared in Nimrod International Journal, Atlanta Review, Tar River Poetry, Southampton Review, and elsewhere. Her poetry has been a finalist or a semifinalist for the Pablo Neruda Poetry Prize, the Peter Meinke Poetry Prize, the Split This Rock Poetry of Provocation and Witness Contest, and a handful of others. Michelle has also been a resident artist at the Atlantic Center for the Arts twice, and she currently is a Sullivan visiting lecturer at Stetson University, where she co-runs a community writers workshop in the city of Sanford, Florida. Would you please welcome Michelle Parker Randall?
Thank you. Sorry about that mouthful, that one contest is like, you just keep going with the name. But thank you very much. And I am so excited to be part of the birthday-versary, whichever one we're calling it. It's amazing. And honestly, it's because of Sandy and Kim and Don and all of your hard work. Y'all have been so good to me, and I am grateful for that. And I thank you. I also wanted to thank Jennifer Harper, who generously let me use her artwork for the cover, and it is stunning. And so I wanted to give her a shout out and a thank you for that. So Sandy mentioned that this book is about neurodivergence, and specifically it follows the trajectory of a disease from the day before a psychotic break to the break, care, and then finally return home. Just to give people a warning if that is something that would affect them. So what I'm going to do is sort of dip in along the way and head towards the end. When he got up that morning, everything seemed fine. Everything was different. The drive to the office unencumbered, lanes moved corpuscular, pulsing bright. No brake lights appeared until he approached his destination. The tower, the ride up the elevator, nothing but open doors. His day fixed, cradling phone to shoulder, the weight of his past, fears, the distant shake and tremble, like the rumble of a train away enough to quake the knees and spine. It will be hours yet before he feels the push wind from the locomotive barreling. A wish occurs and leaves before he can think it captured. As afternoon turns to late, he turns to conduct end-of-day tasks and synapses. All is derailed for the next 8 weeks. He is stuck in an endless rail car, carriage coupled to that which he cannot see but senses, his wife, his kids, and somewhere further, tracks unbroken. Forced to trust a conductor who punches tickets by offering change in small white cups, he mouths words he gives no voice to. Scripts by the dozen opening like windows. Ward Gallery grand opening. Just briefly, the last word of this is guilt, but it's G-I-L-T, not G-U-I-L-T. Just want to make sure that was clear because we talk funny. Ward Gallery grand opening. White shoes squeak by me from the station, pills from the cup, pills from gloved hands, pills rock and settle. The charge nurse and her runners, settlers, my hands uncovered, ungloved, with so many gawkers, and so to my room, so to my side. Unstrung, uncountable minutes don't add up, suspended, flat-faced, cobwebby, so I flicker, fluorescent, lights tubal, humming. The wise walk by, fawning and preening, galleristas, rubberneckers. When you have had your fill, look once more, my painted head. At my sides, wait, my naked hands. In the minds of the others painted, hung up, like me in the gallery, living, enframed, held up, as a puzzle shellacked in a doorway of guilt. I cannot tell your side. I can only tell my story, how I watch you slip silent beneath the surface, cresting, fingertips grasping for air, and in my ear, experts whisper, this is normal, just part of the disease. Now we are taught drowning kills quiet. Those struggling in a swim don't call out, splash about, or scream for help. They fall soft, gradual, soundless in blue breaths of light. You are drifting downward in a disorder yet unnamed, at times currentless, a hush. The next moment, rushing churn, rapid white-watered frenzy. I hold fast, restrained on the shore of you, stuck in daylight and breathing the cold cast of air, watching over and over the bob and sway of your body. Hang with me, we do get out of here. Sorry, I promise. I'm not gonna leave you in the ward. What I think about on the drive down. There is the fear of going, the fear of not going or going regretting, the fear of having to wait or running into a friend, a neighbor, of then wanting to lie when I asked why I'm there, the fear of other patients who want to touch my hand, my wrist, ask me to bring them a sandwich tomorrow or real coffee, a large one with cream and sugar. The fear of being mistaken for a patient and the moment it happened, and then finding it funny, then sad. The fear I wanted to be a patient too. The fear of prejudices I knew I held and new ones I kept discovering, names of diseases. The fear of canceling RSVPs, invitations for get-it-togethers. The fear of information management. What did I say to whom? How far news will spread. The fear of truth. I fear multisyllabic tomes of diagnoses, support groups of strangers. It's like fearing the dark, like driving past my own exit again, like missing a step on the stairs. The fear of showing up without a sandwich, afraid of sitting with you while you sleep, wrists restrained. The fear of you waking, the fear of you not waking, wanting to sleep away an entire day, but the alarm rings in the morning. The fear that this day will bring the same as yesterday. The fear today you will ask me for promises I cannot keep. The fear this trek twice a day will stay on my calendar for months or more. The fear 5 years from now I will not have an afternoon a memory surprises me with a laugh and a, all right, I almost forgot that was ours. You guys are so encouraging, thank you. From this side of the bed. That they line the restraints with lamb's wool seems both magnanimous and macabre. How the tufts of wool lie, soft butter yellow against your unmarked wrists. You are fraught and not here by your own choosing. We chose this for you. Your hallmate refuses medication, soils herself to show she can still control. And though we are not allowed pencils or pens, we are allowed the basket of crayons, each wrapped in paper announcing what's inside, orange red, or cornflower blue, which feels untrue. My son's first grade teacher melted bits of crayon into heart-shaped molds, thick stained glass, fat-hearted color. Every crayon should be thus, as if the wrapper reveals. In the ordered ward, meals on trays loaded top to bottom on a wheeled cart, pills ticked out on a clock, tiled floors in neat rows, painted concrete block walls, windows crisscrossed inside with wires and outside with iron, beds parallel to walls, dressers bolted down and square, rails meet up rails, rails on walls, walls and doors kept open all. Maybe we shouldn't write down what we want to say right now anyway. Crayons are fine. Thank you. Wax rhetoric. So hard to rant in crayon, to smear the tainted wax on fax paper that refuses the flecks of pigment. Art. These crayons are cheapo. The black is taboo. Red is forbidden or been eaten. Green we could use. Blue is blue. Decipher this. With white crayon on white paper, I coerce a code onto a shiny sheet to hear what I'm saying, to understand what I'm told, to hold doctor's words to angles to the light. Dare you to read it. Brown is as sad as I'm allowed. Orange is angry. I'm going to read one more from this work and then a couple of new pieces that I've been working on. that are in Florida, which is of course where I am. So, patience. This is towards the end of the trajectory. He is everywhere, the patient man in his well clothes, working at real life in the real world. The cities spin still tales of strong men, how they die and get born again. And this is true of all men, but not the patient man. War rages inside, and peace could be a diversion. Every prescription bottle stuffed up with hope, a trick, a treat, a genie in a lamp. The patient man wakes long before his alarm. He came to the ward with a declaration of traveling through a mountain of dying words and universes. He didn't and did. With new pills tucked in his pocket, reflective as prisms, he trades the fluorescent ward for a sun-bright day. Thank you for letting me read those. I felt very supported and I appreciate that. I'm gonna read one more, is that okay? Okay, read one more. And this one is called Hear Me Out. And what I really like about Florida, and someone described it as that our vegetation is very aggressive, and it is, and that can be a positive thing. So this is Hear Me Out. And there's a quote by A.F. Moritz: "A place belongs to the one who has most deeply loved it." Sometimes it's best to set camp in the very place you've been told you don't belong. Dig in deep, like the loved and hated Florida scrub. It encroaches on all built there. Metallic shine becomes rough, quick crusted, the color of blood. Even boards curl sunward, warp and gray. Nothing will stay. Put anything down, it will green or wander. Listen, what flourishes wants to be there. Do you? Knock down webs and silk threads, block paths again by sunrise. Dew dusted, legends await every chance to rebuild. Cut it down, huff and blow, burn to ground, but come rain and time, all will be recovered. Vines will elbow their way through fences. Seedlings will shove crushed gravel aside and unpath the walkways. So thrive, you hear me? Crack the poured concrete. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Michelle. And whenever, first of all, the new book, you know, takes us to such important places, which, you know, which are the minds of people who are often forgotten or cast out because of the way that their minds are different than others. But whose mind isn't different is kind of my question I'm always left with. And so I really appreciate you illuminating that for us, to have an open mind to all at all times. And also, I'm reminded of Elizabeth Bishop, Florida, the state with the prettiest name. Thank you so much. And congratulations on that very groundbreaking work. Well, next, my friends, we go across the pond over to Galway for our next reader. And I believe we've actually been in a room together once. I could be delusional about that. I could be wanting it to be true. However, I have no doubt that we will be in a room together in the future. So if we weren't in a room in the past, that's fine. It's all is well, all is well. Atracta Fahy joined us many times in the early days of the live open mic. And it was always a revelation. I believe the first reading was part of our Titanic Irish Poetry Showcase reading. I could be wrong. I didn't have a chance to go check all my notes. But nevertheless, every time she has been able to join us, it has been such a depth of poetry and strength of spirit, really embodying those things that Muriel Rukeyser talks about in The Life of Poetry. So again, the poetry goddesses were with us when it happened that you're here today on this. I love that. Birth-anniversary. I love that, birth-anniversary that you said, Michelle. That's what I'm going to call it, the birth-anniversary day. Well, let me go to the more formal biography. Atracta Fahy's background in nursing social care. She lives in County Galway, Ireland, works as a psychotherapist, and is a mother to 3 children. She completed her master's in writing at the National University of Ireland in Galway in 2017, and she was the October winner in Irish Times, New Irish Writing 2019, the Pushcart, and Best of Web nominee, and has also been included in a number of anthologies. She was also shortlisted for the 2018 Over the Edge New Writer of the Year and longlisted again for that same award in 2019. Shortlisted for the Allingham Poetry Competition both in 2019 and in 2020. And she has been published in Stinging Fly, Banshee, Poetry Ireland Review, Honest Ulsterman, Poet Head, Orbis, and several other journals at home and abroad. Fly on the Wall Poetry published her debut chapbook collection, Dinner in the Fields, in March 2020. Would you please join me in sending a very warm welcome this evening over in Galway, Atracta.
Hi, Sandy. Hi, everybody. It's lovely to be here. And I want to start off by saying happy birthday to Cultivating Voices. It's fabulous. I can remember when we started last year. So it's wonderful to be here on an evening where we're celebrating the first birthday, and long may it continue. And we're also celebrating, it's a year since I published my poetry book, chapbook, Dinner in the Fields. And a few days before lockdown, so I didn't get to have a launch, but I've had readings and it's worked out just as well. And I'm really pleased about that. So I want to thank you all at Cultivating Voices for what you've done for us this year, because getting through the pandemic has been so difficult. And this has been a place to land every Sunday night. And I've tuned in. I think I've only missed about 3, and whatever I've missed, I've listened afterwards, because it was like a holding. It was like an anchor. And there's another group that also provided that for me during the week. And some of that group have joined us this evening from the Cool People and the Night People. And we believe in world poetry domination. So anyway, it's lovely. I want to welcome them and thank them for being here. And my other friends who have tuned in, I know Matt has tuned in from Baltimore, and I'm sure there are others on Facebook. So I just want to say thank you to everybody. And because it's World History Month, I wanted to start off with a poem, and it's a poem that was published in Poetry Ireland Review. And the reason I've chose this poem this evening is because World History, or Women's History Month, it's a poem Evan Boland chose, a poem of mine Evan Boland chose to publish in Poetry Ireland Review. And I'm just blessed that she, before she passed. So she's history now, really. I was thinking about that today and thought it was quite sad, but I'm so privileged she chose one of my poems because it's a gift to me. So this poem is called Encounters. encounters, staring at the long queue of silent people, staring at blank wounded faces who gaze, staring past grimaced facades and lifeless bodies, staring with fear that haunts look-away smiles, staring into the mauve shabby purse that's almost empty, staring back at a clouded window that reflects my age, staring down at pleated bills I'm trying to pay, staring through the aloof woman in the distance, staring at those who once were friends, staring at an iPhone, at iPhone photos of my children, staring grateful for the rich life of my handbag. And I forgot to say, I want to thank both Anne and Michelle and their readings. I felt that's going to be hard to follow. It was just tremendous to hear them, and I look forward to getting their books. Now, the next poem I'm going to read is from my book, Dinner in the Fields, and because it's Women's History Month, I hope that this will become history, and it's about domestic violence. So let's hope that will be part of history. But for now, it's not, and it's actually increased during the pandemic. And you will have heard me read this poem before, but I think it's important to read. It's called The Woman in Waterside House. And that Waterside House is a refuge in Galway for abused women. And I worked there for over 5 years. The Woman in Waterside House. I have no reason to trust sympathy when I tell you I hid for 13 days waiting for Marks to disappear. I'm asked if I provoked him. The guards call the beating a domestic. Social workers on welfare insist boxes be ticked. Slight disgust in their faces. Even so, when you're leaving, look for maintenance. And then the forms, and the council informs me the waiting list is years long. And the judge doesn't want to know. Perpetrators, he says, have rights. He convinced me that I cannot live without him, and I am nothing, and no one cares. I'm alone. I cannot leave. Easier to pretend my life is full than to face the shame in your eyes, mine, and the shame of the world when you are a woman with a fist over your face. And that's from my book. And the next one I want to read again to honor Women's History Month. I know it's in America, but I think it's important we do it here. And it's about the mother and baby homes in Ireland, and it was particularly the one in Tuam. And you would have heard me read the poem before that I wrote, because I worked with the Bon Secours as a nurse, and I was born there. I worked as a nurse, and I come from near Tuam. And one of the things, and this is, so I would have read that poem before, was an ekphrastic poem. And this is another poem I wrote because many people have written about Tuam, and rightly so, because this is for anyone that doesn't know that there were babies. If a woman became pregnant outside of marriage, she was sent to a mother and baby home. And the babies were often adopted, and many of them died. And there was a big discovery in Tuam that there was 798 babies found in a disused septic tank. And this is where I went to school. I used to get the school bus from right outside that particular graveyard now, but it wasn't then. It was just the grounds of the mother and baby home that we didn't know anything about. So it was a massive shock. And it was a massive shock to me because I was born the year it all stopped. I nursed there, and we knew the nuns. So very few from Tuam write about this, but other people write. And I felt an obligation to write about it. So there was a vigil. The Pope came to Ireland in 2018, and there was a vigil. There was big controversy about whether he would visit Tuam or not, and because it was all going on at the time the discovery had been made, but he chose not to. So on that day, he was saying Mass in Phoenix Park for all of Ireland. There was a vigil in Tuam for the babies, and I was at that vigil. And at the end of the vigil, there was a murmuration, swallows just. Or a startling murmuration over the town. And I had goosebumps. I actually have goosebumps now telling you. So I wrote this poem in response to that. I can't hear you, Sandy. I see your lips moving. I hope this is okay. Murmuration at Tuam Vigil, 26th of August, 2018. On the day the Pope says Mass in Phoenix Park, I'm back again, Tuam, where I was born, at a time when other unwelcome babies were also born. I stand at a vigil in the spot where bodies swaddled in blemished cloth were found. Dead infants plunged into murky ground, stained little frames lined one by one. Amongst my own, I try to make sense as the world's opinion weighs heavy over our landscape. We, in silent disgrace, ignorant of enormity, our heads bowed. We knew unwanted babies were buried in unmarked graves, heard they'd die from TB, polio. We knew the council bulldozed land to make room for estates, homes in demand. Ancestral, unblessed land pushed to extend back gardens. We look at the list, familiar names, families silenced in shame, while we lift our heads above scandal, unsure who's to blame. While the world screams, we unite, try to have dignity in grief. We too want justice. Today we reflect on little bones buried in limestone chrysalis, Persephones, all of them, girls and boys, sleeping, left in another world, a pit for the world in need of redemption. Their uninvited, barely formed bodies could not ask for anything. Without choice, babies' bones a sacrifice for sin, lust, even love. Pagan clay a home. Their spirits rose long before they were found. Buds opened in the underworld. Winged souls gone from this cold earth. Their vision no longer ours. Birds, white doves moving across the sky, caressing clouds. As the Pope gives Holy Communion, we stand vigil at their grave. After the gathering, a startling murmuration spreads over our town, calls us to look at what's happening today. Children cast to other hollows, Mediterranean, overcrowded camps, bombed cities, cages, homeless shelters. Life and death, infants always the sacrifice. Sunflowers showing us how much life needs death to become. Thank you. And the next one I want to read is, it's one I wrote because when we say women's history, we really have to go back to the earliest time. And this is called Mary of Magdalene. And it's one, I love reading ancient texts and I like to find out the truth. So I like studying Gnosticism, and the truth is about Mary Magdalene. She wasn't, it was like Pope Gregory came along, I think it was in the 16th or the 11th century, I forget now, but he decided to split the feminine. So we have to go that far back. And he turned it in, the feminine was split into either virgin or whore. That's the truth of it. And we've been trying to integrate sense as women. And the truth is, for all women, if you put us all in a room, which corner would we go into? Like, we wouldn't fit into either of those. So it was convenient. But the thing is, I based this poem, and it's a very cheeky poem, but it was, I started there because I love, as I said, Gnosticism and Mary Magdalene. There was 4 Marys. There's the cleaning of the demons was actually a metaphor to represent the 7 deadly sins we have as humans. So I think that's all I have to tell you about it. But it's, if we think about it, and this is the statement I'm making in the poem, Christianity is based on the resurrection of Jesus. So if you keep that in mind for the poem, and it's called Mary of Magdalene. No interest in being saint. I might have been a teacher had you understood my message was revolutionary, not military. Now that this era has passed, there are revelations. Jesus did not call me names, control with sex, rape, throw acid in my face, defile, brand me a whore, cast me into a workhouse and call it a Magdalene laundry. He was empathic, and I washed his feet with my tears, dried with my hair, to redeem the sins, the 7 demons we all have as humans. Pope Gregory knew from ancient texts the power of women to lead with compassion. Out of fear, he smeared me, blinded you from truth. The gospel of Mary dismissed from the Bible. Now we have the sorrow of Sophia, suffering and alienation of the divine feminine, and a time of plague where the only countries caring for their people are those led by women. Consider this: if Christianity is the belief in the resurrection of Jesus, then I am its founder. Was it a vision, or did I see him in body? I was there at the tomb, the only witness, this eroticized woman whose word led to a new faith. It was I who gave birth to Christianity. So the next poem I'm going to read is called The Vagina Goddess, again for women's history. I tried to pick poems that represent different aspects of women. And this is from when the riots were going on in Portland, and a story came out, and I was really intrigued with it. And it was about a woman who went out into the night, and it was in the papers, and it was like, one would imagine, well, I was intrigued because, again, it was going back to ancient text. I had read some of the myths from Egypt, the religious stories, and the mythical goddess Ba, well, she's actually, maybe she was real, but one of the things the goddess of the grain would do was flash her private parts to calm things down, you know. So it was like when people got alerted, they had this ritual. And this woman in Portland did this in the middle of the riots, and everything stopped. The army stopped, the police stopped, nobody did anything. So I thought, did this come as an unconscious thing from her, or did she know it? Was she reading like me? So I tried to embody the different aspects of the feminine in this poem, and to say to people, Sheila na Gig is the represents the ancient Irish myth that represents the feminine, but it represents, it's a symbol of a woman's vagina and two hands pulling the vulva apart, and it represents containment and the womb and safety. And Hecate is the goddess of the underworld, you could say, and Ba is the Egyptian goddess. So this woman in Portland inspired me to write this. The Vagina Goddess, 1:45 a.m., nightly protests in Portland. Sheila na Gig walks out onto the intersection, paces the crosswalk in front of armed police, officers in riot gear. They stare, eyes fixated on her poise. Headlights glare as she moves in ballerina poses, naked other than face mask and cap. Hecate lies down, kicks up her feet, refuses protection from others nearby, her body defying their thoughts. Yes, I'm vulnerable. That is my strength. She opens her legs, a flash to all who dare look. Vagina goddess of Eleusinian mysteries. Ba rises from the burial place of shame, takes the stone head of patriarchy. Come, come, her eyes say to men who believe you just grab her by the pussy. Come, her body invites. It's dream time again. Divine, feminine, collective power. She tilts her head to her shoulder. They move away. Grain goddess knows how to relieve tension. Babu knows there's life, even in tragedy. And I'm going to finish with just two short poems, and it kind of represents myself as a woman. One is Watching Stars. I've only written them the last few weeks. Watching the stars. I gaze through the Velux window and watch stars shining as I lie alone this end of the void, my world, and 3 flickering stars, Orion's belt. I imagine spirits, stardust again, traveling through space, interstellar vacuum without matter, and wonder of the woman I knew who died last night. If she's in the bardo, and where the bardo may be. What must it be like to be free from a body you hardly knew in all its changing? No breath now, no hand to pen a letter home or write a poem. And I just want to thank everyone. I'll finish on this one, and I want to thank everybody. I hope I haven't left anyone out. Thank you, Sandy, for all you've done. You've been so supportive this year. And this is called Alone, and this is the mother in the empty nest where kids come and go. So there's a bit of a change in kind of my reading, and it's like coming to terms with this. And again, thank you everyone for being here, and happy birthday. It's called Alone. There is a comfort in being alone, waking to the high-pitched song of the wren. This morning, a crane flew over my house. Its distinctive call a gatekeeper. Thoughts threatening to flood with things never said, yet heard in a way one can hear. You are nobody. The fine line between what Buddha meant by non-attachment and the place where you turn the sharp knife of criticism inward. Through the window, I watch a blackbird dotted in raindrops. The shadows of death looms regardless. I cannot unearth the fact that if not ash, all I will be in the end is food for worms. And while I am here, there will always be yearning, a pulse born from grief, and too long midwife to everyone, the opal iris of a jackdaw on an outcast branch. I'm not looking for who you can become. I am looking at who you are now. I paint my lips red to hide the strain of the years pushed into my body. I'm ready to leave. In the distance, the crane calls me upwards, and I go out to face the world. Thank you very much. Thank you. You're too kind. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much.
I love the heart, Sandy.
And I go out to face the world. I mean, there it is. The many faces that your poetry has brought to the world and will continue to. Thank you.
Thank you.
So very, very much.
Thank you.
And we'll see you soon.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, our final reader in our new books showcase today, because it's not our final reader, because we have our bonus round, as I've been calling it, for our birth anniversary, as Michelle coined it. I love that. Is Debbie Bacharach. And Debbie and I go way back, even further back than I even remembered. She reminded me that we have shared a writing center history together, and it's so appropriate to have her here today, because we have a shared history through poetry. We're both members of this fantastic group called Poets on the Coast, and also have a shared history through our work as educators, which so many of you are, in addition to all the other professions that people have. But, you know, there are many, many ways to teach. And poetry is a great teacher. So I consider all of you teachers, because you're all poets. So it is a thrill to be welcoming Debbie to celebrate her new book, another one of those groundbreaking books, and with its themes, particularly in Women's History Month, which should never just be relegated to 1 month, as so many things should not be relegated to 1 month or 1 day. Well, Debbie Bacharach is the author of Shake and Tremor from Grayson Books 2021. And After I Stop Lying from Cherry Grove Collections 2015. Debbie received a 2020 Pushcart honorable mention and has been published in Vallum, Poet Lore, and the Southampton Review, among many other journals, which I can attest to because we're part of a group that reports where we send our work to weekly, and she's published widely. She is an editor, teacher, and tutor in Seattle. And another thing I want to say about Debbie is she is an incredible ambassador of poetry in her own right, because she is one of those folks who has dedicated herself to writing book reviews of other people's books, which is so, so important. And I wanted to give a shout out to that aspect of her citizenship, because she didn't put it in her bio, but it's so important. And thank you for that work. And thank you for the poetry. And I'm really excited for your debut today on Cultivating Voices Live Poetry.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Sandy. Thank you, Cultivating Voices. I'm a little overwhelmed. The readings have been so gorgeous and moving to me, and I have to redirect. Okay, it's my turn. I'm so glad Atracta read about Mary Magdalene, because that kind of leads beautifully into my book Shake and Tremor, which is a concept book. It grew out of a class I took in college called Feminist Interpretation of Scripture. So continuing on with our Women's History Month, but history way back. So these poems, that set the academic background for the work. And then I used my creative curiosity to further explore these women in the Bible and how modern day is also how they reflect in the modern world. I do not expect you to have any background in the Bible. I'm going to give you some of that background. You may have heard of Abraham and Sarah, who were kind of the progenitors, the start of the Jewish people. When we enter this poem, they're called Abram and Sarai. God promises them many, many descendants, but Sarai does not conceive. And she demands that Abraham take her enslaved servant Hagar in her stead. Women's work. Sarai, Abram's wife, took Hagar the Egyptian, her slave girl, and gave her to her husband Abram as a wife. Genesis 16:3. All of them, Abram, Sarai, and Hagar, born into a time of quiet. No radio line hum, no buzz from broken transformers. You could hear the cattle in the far field. It's hard to imagine that level of quiet, how you could hear Abram's footfall, how it differed from Sarai's as it approached the flap in Hagar's tent. The tent made of goat skin. From the goat, Hagar raised and fed and chastised and chased, and eventually whose throat she slit. The goat whose carcass she butchered, meat she seared, whose hide she scraped, softened with its own brains, her own urine, because she knew how and she could. And now, as this supple skin Hagar stretched and tied is lifted, it whispers, survive. So in the book, I interweave poems about the biblical people with people from the modern day struggling with similar issues. And in the case of the next two poems, sex and infertility. I am writing about fucking. Because I am human, I am not the only one. Because I like it. Because sorrow was taken. Because in Iran, the mullahs determined no film with even a slight touch, a fingertip against a cheek, a backlit shot of one shoulder against another, a hold even of consolation can be made. And yet the Iranian population tripled in the post-Shah era. So someone, and why not me, needs to write about fucking. Because it is terrifying. Because I am 47, but really I would have grabbed at 27, at 17. Because it's not polite, and I am always very please and thank you. Because there are already enough words for snow. Because of shame, that fishbone in the throat. Because we are made of stars. And by the way, Sandy, I wrote that poem at a Poets on the Coast retreat. Between IVF treatments, my best friend explains, I want a baby. I want a baby like I want a glass of water, like a glass in my hands that doesn't shatter, not like glasses lined one after the other with small pebbles and water, all salt. Cast bones for me. I want a baby more than Sarah in duty, more than Hagar who blinked. They told me to drink herbs, iris broth. I left the dregs. That's why my womb broke like a glass puzzle. Read tea leaves, tarot. I pee on a stick, on barley that doesn't sprout. Who are these women who glow? I want to steal. For this child, I will take acupuncture like slivers of glass in my womb. Play the harmonium, call my child home. I crouch by the glass in the road, broken shards. God couldn't put this back together. I press shards in my palm. One mandrake root left to chew. I scramble through old dirt to find it. And this is a poem about community, which is another thing that happens in the Bible, of course. The firmament. It was one of those summers we climbed out windows, swam in the lake on hot days, and days that weren't that hot. We baked Alaska in a rented oven, told jokes on the floor. The jokes, the cake, exquisitely delicious. It was one of those summers we laughed with banjos, sat in the front row on the grass, ate blueberries, sang voraciously. We did not steal each other's lovers or even borrow them for a few hours in a hot, dark basement. See us there in a head to belly chain, Michaela to Ellie to Debbie to Annie, full of matter, all aglow, all around the world we went. So one thing I love about Bible stories is they're open to so many different interpretations. And in my reading, the master-slave relationship between Abraham and Hagar is also a love affair and part of a complex polyamorous dynamic. Hagar gives birth to Ishmael, Sarah gives birth to Isaac, and then she demands that Abraham send Hagar away. And this next poem is from Hagar's point of view. The affair. Tonight, I walk into the desert with one sack of water and my son. My body and ocean, I move with the moon. I did not demand a promise. I did not ask for my son Ishmael, already curled in a grave-like hollow. An angel visits me on this road to Beersheba. Angel is the word I say when I mean strength of will, deep and abiding conviction. Angel is the word I say when I hear water rise up in the well. So in the book, I have more poems about Hagar, Abraham, and Sarah, but now we're going to move on to Lot and his wife. God promises not to destroy the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah if there are 10 good men in them. There are not. But the angels who will rain fire and brimstone on Sodom and Gomorrah go to Lot, who actually is Abraham's nephew, and promise to spare him and his family if they leave and do not look back. Lot's wife looks back and God turns her into a pillar of salt. And the angels, they come to Lot's door and warn him the cities will be destroyed. And I thought of all the other times you get news like that. The call comes at midnight. You get the news in the corridor. Your eyes slide down the sterile, washed out green walls, outside the room where your father still breathes, the door not even closed, just a curtain of birds with sharp beaks between you. You get the sharp news in the airport bathroom, the faucet broken, the hand towel stuck, a small boy almost overbalanced by a blue Elmo suitcase as he walks alone toward the door. You get the new news and the flights are all booked. You remember that boyfriend of your mother's who didn't die of being drunk. You remember the day you drove angry in the rain, the pool of oil on the road. You remember black stitches, blood seeping at the edges. You get the old news and you must wrap dishes so they don't crack. You write out your full name. When you get the devastating news, a large liquid silence tries in vain to devour the skin of the sky. So these cities are to be destroyed. Everything in these cities. Sodom and Gomorrah the night before. A mother awake cups the moon, takes 3 sips. Her husband has been off throwing down his luck, probably tried to take the men who came through the gate, drunk the wine he was bound to sacrifice. A privy door slowly squeaks open, bangs shut. Shards still clutter the public way. The night so dark the lavender explodes in whispers. The rats don tuxedos and waltz, while Lot's daughter sleeps with a bracelet from her betrothed. A muscle spasms in the mother's chest. She buckles, but doesn't shift the suckling child. Thank you. So this next poem is the title poem, Shake and Tremor. And because we're all here today, you get the behind the scenes story. It is the first poem I wrote for this book, long before I had this idea of a book. This is the poem I wrote. And for me, it's Lot's wife speaking after she's been turned into a pillar of salt. Shake and tremor. Still the blue heron lifts long legs over early morning. Still the blue-green boulders filled with barnacles. Still the green ropes of sea. Still rivulets in the sand, remnants of the night. Still I believe in the power of lust, the full shake and tremor of living on a moving planet that revolves around a ball of fire. Still the crabs small and white, like moons in need, like promises unspoken or promises spoken and unfulfilled. Still I wish to be swallowed whole by the sea. Still the sea, the spume and crash of the sea. Still the salt-rich water coating my skin. Still my porous skin. I'm gonna read 2 more poems about Potiphar's wife, a different character from the Bible, and then I'm going to end with the first poem from the book. And it's going to be a broadside that my friend Marcy Swift contributed the art for. So it's a celebration. So later in Genesis, Joseph, who is Abraham's great-grandson, is sold into slavery in Egypt and becomes an overseer for Potiphar, one of Potiphar's officers. Potiphar's wife tries to seduce Joseph, but he refuses, and she then falsely accuses him of rape. Potiphar's wife considers how we got here. And after a time, his master's wife cast her eyes upon Joseph and said, "Lie with me." Genesis 39:7. The world doesn't care if I have long hair, brushed, unbrushed, perfumed, chopped. The world doesn't care if I samba in the park, wear heels and eat almonds, that my fingers are fragrant with oranges. Why would the world care if cholera comes across the water, that dreams stink of dogwood? In the beginning, Joseph was so beautiful. Potiphar's wife talks about that time. In the end, Joseph did all right for himself. Because he was in the dungeons, he called the dreams, and from there, he worked it like he worked it in my husband's home, putting together puzzles of rain, watching hands. Oh, he watched. Roll pastry dough on marble tabletops. I saw the oasis shimmer at the edge of the horizon, like I had been walking toward it my entire life, like I had been crawling on my hands and knees. All right. Okay, I'm going to share my screen and read you this last poem, and the artwork is by my friend Marcy Swift, who is here, I think, watching today. When God is a woman, she does not accept apologies for the incessant thrum. She explains obtuse angles, how to lay cable. She understands that tigers eat alligators. She set it up that way. She rides the New York subways, looks strangers in the eye. She has her first child at 90, changes her name. It's amazing what a woman can accomplish when she is not afraid. Thank you.
Well, there might be someone else.
Wow. Yes, it is amazing what a woman can accomplish when she is not afraid. What a fabulous ending to our new book showcase reading. To end on those affirming, powerful lines, which of course remind me of right behind me here, right there, Audre Lorde's quotation, that when I dare to be powerful, to use my strength in the service of my vision, it becomes less and less important whether I am afraid. There it is. Thank you, Debbie Bacharach. Shake and Tremor is the new book. You've heard it here now on Cultivating Voices Live Poetry. And thank you to our other poets in our new book showcase today. And congratulations to Anne Tweedy, Michelle Parker Randall, and Atracta Fahy. What a remarkable display of women's voices today during Women's History Month, which is every day, as I said earlier. Thank you so much. Well, normally I'd be wrapping up the reading, but today's a really special day because it's our 1 year anniversary or birthiversary now. I love it. That's my new favorite word, I think. Maybe we should all write poems called birthiversary. It is the 1 year birthiversary of Cultivating Voices Live Poetry. And we agreed in our planning to have a live open mic after the new book showcase. My penchant for the epic long reading, of course. I will do my best to contain my enthusiasm about the anniversary, because really it's my enthusiasm for all of you. It's my enthusiasm for what we've been able to do together in this past year, and to really want to showcase that. Well, before we go to the open mic, I want to share a little bit of history with you all about what we've gone through together this last year of poetry. Well, we held our first live open mic on Sunday, the 29th of March at 3 p.m. Pacific from the home of Anita Rognes in Missoula, Montana. She is the mother of a good friend of mine, and we both got stranded at her house and ended up there for 6 weeks. Little did she know, when she said that we could do the little live poetry thing in her living room, that it would turn into what it's turned into. So I want to give credit to Anita Rognes for giving us her living room for 6 weeks from Missoula, Montana. And in mid-May, we finally felt it was safe enough to make a mad dash back to Olympia. Well, that first program, 12 poets joined us on Facebook Live. There was no Zoom yet. We weren't using it. And it had, of course, all the thrills and spills and chills of going live. Those of you who did it or didn't do it because you watched what we were doing know what I'm talking about. And our very first reader on Cultivating Voices Live Poetry, if we ever have like a Cultivating Voices Live Poetry trivia night or something. The very first reader was Patrick Dixon, my Olympia Poetry Network buddy. Well, in late April, we had our first special event, which was the Titanic Irish Poetry Showcase on April 14th, the anniversary of the sinking of the Titanic. That was co-sponsored with the Limerick Writers Center. And thanks out to Dominic Taylor for co-hosting that with us and getting the amazing readers that we had join us from Ireland. As a result of that reading, we began to alternate start times. It was very late, the start time then when they were coming on. And we wanted to alternate the start times each week to allow our friends from across the pond to join us more easily some weeks. In July, we added our now very popular new book showcase that you heard from today, featuring poets whose books had launched just before or during the pandemic. And I really love this feature of Cultivating Voices live poetry. It's very fun to book them and schedule them. And I love that we're able to help everybody out and hopefully sell some books. Well, in addition to the new book showcase and the live poetry open mics, there's been many a special event in partnership with various presses and journals. Like in June, we had our Poetry Pride Parade with Headmistress Press. In August, we hosted our Votes for Women, a celebration and contextualization to commemorate the 100th anniversary of US women's suffrage. In September, on Labor Day, we hosted Raising Lily Ledbetter, Women Occupy the Workplace with Lost Horse Press. And we had a celebration of poets on the coast as well. In October, we had our National Coming Out Day Poetry March, our Nasty Women Anthology readings with Lost Horse Press, a celebration with the poets from Pratique, the international journal edited by Yuyutsu Sharma. We had a holiday party in December, and then we took 2 weeks off, and we came back in January with no special event because we were planning our Laureate Love Fest, co-sponsored with the Olympia Poetry Network. We did a celebration of Black Lives Matter, Black History Month, Women's History Month reading, and just a week ago, we had an incredibly powerful and moving reading on World Poetry Day. Well, thanks to every single one of you who's read, shared your humanity and vulnerability as part of this poetry platform. You know, I'm really reminded of Don Krieger's poem, Our Shared Humanity. Every time we gather, you know, we have an opportunity to bear witness, to speak truth, and even sometimes celebrate our shared humanity. And we've certainly done all of these things during a year that has tried each one of us and our beloveds literally to our brinks of our existential extinction. But through it all, there's always been room for poetry. Poetry was the surest lifeboat for me every single Sunday. Well, we have many more special events coming up, but let's head on over now to the live open mic. Each poet who's going to read today will read one poem up to 3 minutes, which includes any additional remarks that you have. And I'm going to not talk too much in between if I can help it, because we want to get in as many voices as possible to celebrate our anniversary. So please be respectful of the 3 minutes. And if I need to, I'll come in and help you out there. Well, our first poet is someone who's joined us for a number of our live poetry open mics, stays up very, very late to do it. An internationally known Bengali poet, Shaswata Gangopadhyay. Welcome, and thank you for being here with us from India tonight, early morning.
Thank you. First of all, compliments from India, far, far away from all of you. And in India, in Kolkata, it is now 2 a.m. in the midnight. So my compliments and my best wishes for the first birthday anniversary and all the future colorful candles for the Cultivating Live Voices. So I write in Bengali, which is the 4th largest language of the earth. And as per UNESCO, it is the sweetest language. Okay, now I am just directly coming to my poems. First of all, a poem which you all can easily correlate, Pandemic. In the genitals of a prostitute, if the spider weaves a net, you have to understand the country's GDP growth rate is less than 3%. Unemployment is increasing day by day. If a saint burns incense in the crematorium and then read pornography, taking out of his bag, you have to understand next 1 year, there will not be even a single drop of rain here. If a drunk leaves the tavern, run with a sigh in the middle of the night, if his shadow moves with him, can't stick, then you have to understand in next 7 days, from finger to finger, from lips to lips, the deadly virus will spread rapidly. The mask that is worn all the time will get stuck on our face and cannot be opened by dragging. Another poem, Poetry of Third World. I am nobody, nobody at all. Just a cultivator of cotton belonging to the third world, his youngest son. I have grown up by swallowing the froth of sea. On my burnt skin, there is printed the world map all over my body. Hunger rises in spiral motion around my stomach. If you give me love, I will multiply it 3 times by sheer magic and put it under your feet. If you give me hatred, if you offend me from my top to bottom, I will come back not to take revenge, but to my writing papers. And I will throw each of my poems one after another, just like daggers. Yes, all the boys of third world are just like this.
Thank you so much. And we're so, namaste. We're so grateful for you being with us so early in the morning there. We'll see you very soon. Next
I am also
up
equally honored.
Thank you. Shaswata, be well. Next, joining us from New Mexico is Bill Nevins. Hello.
Hello, and happy anniversary and birthday, and thank you so much for this wonderful forum that we have. Indeed, it's been our lifeboat through the pandemic. Okay, this poem began in my little book here, okay, but it escaped and turned into something else. It's called Fall Lightly, a Party Piece for Nobody, for ED. This poem is not me. This flight may be fancy, but it ain't my worry if I fall. Don't fret. This text is not you either. We can fly free in this song, whomever we may be. This go round, forget your parachute. It's like that eerie December concert when Miles Davis turned his back on us, but held one delicious aching note for what seemed all night long. Then he left the stage, and we silently filed out into the bleak Massachusetts night. Michelangelo's Roman steps descend like a river without end. Yet Rainier Rilke, from his deep diving heart, reminds us that everything serious is difficult. Yet, were it easy to find solitude together, as easy perhaps as sex can be? Or were it as easy as it is to fall backwards into a rushing mountain stream, then we too might tumble laughing past rapids, round fierce rocks, until we dream drift at last out to that moon-tugged rolling sea. Gracias.
That's great. Muchas gracias, Bill, and thanks for your many readings on the live open mic, as well as you're an alumnus of our new book showcase. And we look forward to our next time with you. Well, joining us next is one of Bill's neighbors from the Albuquerque area. I met Teresa Gallion in Albuquerque virtually at Placitas at the Cactus Reading Series, which is also where I met Bill. We have so glad that folks from the ABQ area have joined us today in full force, as you always are. What a great community there. And thanks, Teresa. And I'll mention something about your upcoming reading soon after you read.
Flames burn for you. The theory of flames across my breast sings in your essence, making love in the embers of your arms and legs. The burn spreads around me. I want to hold truth in my hands, wrap them around you, and feel you melt into the moisture of love. Let me drown in the eternity of you across lifetimes. When you are finished with me, drop me with mercy. The rhythms of my heart will play me into a permanent sleep with your smile sheltering my breathing space. Complete surrender is the only way I may cross over to the next life, to float against your light body. Everything is sacred. Even the tainted must heal with a new coat of earth rubbed against the face. Now you must be told, only grace lives in my garden. I want you, but cannot take you there. You are not ready to embrace holiness. It is still beyond your range of understanding. Everything you do must be in preparation to receive the sacred touch of divine love. I want to nourish you with my love embrace. Reach out when you're ready. I am here waiting for you. Thank you so much. I am so blessed to be a part of this great CVL community.
Thank you so much, Teresa Gallion, from her new book, The Scent of Love. You've heard her read in the open mic, and will be joining us on July 11th for her new books showcase. We look forward to that, and thank you. And it was always a pleasure also to see you at Not the Time to Be Silent as well. We got to share that platform, and fantastic. We'll see you soon. Blessings. Well, next up is a salmon sister of mine. So excited for her new book that will be coming out called State of Grass. And would you please welcome from Western Massachusetts, Janet MacFadyen.
Thank you, Sandy. I'll be reading a poem from the new book coming from Salmon. It's called Tar Pit Elegy. And who incited the fires? Who decided? Who wore the boots and who was raked under them? Who just upped and walked out? And who was left to pick up? What defined family, story, hierarchy? These questions just lead to the tar pits, the panic drownings, the thrashings. I tar and feather myself here in the streets, the white houses. I am doing it now, and I am not alone. And I am not done with this, though truthfully, I'm utterly sick of it. I never had a million other women tying you with their hair, though I will tell you they are out there. They just never knew they had sisters until now. I'm angry again, really. I thought I had walked out. See you later. But then something drags its cadaverous body up the old stairs, standing at the end of my bed where you enter my dream world, my nostrils, my lungs, my reinforced concrete. Am I dead yet? The brain never unplugs, knotting pillowcases into fists and clots, cakes of ash passed down from the ancestors into my hands, dropped from their boots. What came down to your grandfather, to your father, and to you comes down to me. And now I have set fire to the kitchen again, fling clinkers to the keening winds, these charred kernels, your broken chest, my broken heart. I send your hair on the tar smoke of burnt offerings to the dire wolf, the short-faced bear, offered my severed fingers, my left breast, offer the odor of panic, odor of jackboot and silence, of shame and breaking glass, smoke so thick and choking, even the spirit world can no longer stand it. And they begin a generations long slow weeping for what we all have shared. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Janet. I've had the unbelievable privilege to read the galley of your upcoming collection, and so grateful to have you here as a poet, but also Janet is one of those pillars of poetry who also has a press as well. I like to mention the prismatic ways that each of you contribute to poetry. In addition, because folks have many faces with how they contribute to poetry, and it's important to also lift the editors and the publishers and the presses as well. So thank you for the good work that you have done, and we'll see you very soon. Next is another good friend that gotten to hear on Cultivating Voices live poetry, but also spend time with it, Not the Time to Be Silent. Always love hearing a poem from Sven Kretzschmar. thank you, Sven, for being here today with us. I'm so glad.
Well, thank you for inviting me, Sandy, and also to Kim for inviting me as well. And happy birthday to CBLP. And also, good evening, everyone from Germany, from where I'm reading. I'm going to read a poem tonight from this anthology. It is The Writing Home, the New Irish Poets anthology that was published in 2019 by Daedalus Press in Ireland. And it contains poems from people who have come to Ireland to live there and work there, or in my case, to study there. I have moved back since, but the poems are still in there. And the one I'm going to read is called Bus to Clooney. John's fiddle in the concert hall way back still echoes in my ear on the bus from Belfield to Clooney. Back from the office, back for the night. A booze-shrouded construction worker next to me who hopped on at Ashton Quay opens another carpackie, facing a masterpiece of solitude in the dark windscreen of the upper deck on which nobody is supposed to make their stand. We hold on to handrails and our incognito day after day, driving back to bedroom towns full of strangers, like ourselves. We buy what's broken, put cash in hand for a place to stay, to live, ignorant of previous tenants' dirt between floorboards we are meant to learn to call home. In the evening sky, I spot a flicker of lights following an invisible path down somewhere, out of here, into the distance of night. Back in the house, I should make time to write a letter to my family, another letter I won't send, telling how I spent time between a place I love and a place that I've ended up in, if only for now. I will write my way into this new life, one line at a time. Thank you very much.
Wonderful, as usual. Thank you, Sven. And I have to get that anthology. I don't know how I haven't gotten it up until this point, but that's on my list for my next new book. I apologize, everyone. I skipped over a person who never misses Cultivating Voices live poetry. If we had an attendance award, which we don't, Kate Wegrzyn would receive it. Although maybe Kim Ports is running up there. Yeah, probably the two of you. My apologies, because Kate Wegrzyn is a pillar of poetry in terms of the support that she provides to everybody week after week as one of those consummate listeners of poetry. And I'll never forget her contribution in our holiday poetry celebration when I had just arrived in Connecticut. So thank you for being here today.
Hello, thank you. Behind me is a poster, and it is called Women Who Dare. It was in my shop, and I had people making a list of like, can I get that poster? Can I get that poster? My shop was divine people, all people. And today I'm reading quickly what I found from 2014 in a notebook. And this last year, I have learned poetry forms, and I hope I don't go over time. I better set this. Go. Start. I begin with an American sonnet. These are from 2014 that I've reassembled. Early morning, slow ride home, beauty all around, sighted, grand mule deer herd in the field, the flourishing field, fresh green leaf buds on the newest twigs to graze, I pulled over, I parked to stare with awe their alert and quiet stance. Mule deer does with spring fawns waited at bay. 4-point mule deer buck stood his ground. 3 lesser mule deer bucks alert rose above and circled does and spring fawns, unfolding shift, a change of the guard. By chance I peered around the bend, approaching now 20 white-tailed deer, nose to tail, close in single file, journeyed north, a narrow path above the ravine. White-tailed deer range eastern river and plains, out towards now northwest foothills, atypical to witness a convergence on mule deer terrain. When I pour my heart out, will you be thirsty? When I give my dedication, will you attend? In the name of love, will you remember the very thing that brought the children? The threshold of marigolds, fresh snow, morning golden glow, make this my home place to grow. Together to remember in the name of love is what you have forgotten. I gave you devotion. Fiercely you defend. The children will now need to follow their shadow with delight. There is nothing their young hearts will ever impose. The threshold of marigolds, spring sang, glisten and renew. We all found the place where we grew. I love you, Sandy Yannone. I love my friends on Cultivating Voices. Thank you for grooming me to be a poet like you. And I will publish, I will renew, I will give you my love. Will you be thirsty?
Ah, indeed. I raise a glass to you, Kate. Oh, thank you. Fabulous. Wonderful. And as Terry Colleen reminded me, Kate also was the winner of our Laureate Love Fest giveaway. And I think we might be doing a giveaway for today too. Just so you know, you find out later and we announce it. But I think we're going to pick someone through our registration list randomly.
I just received my book from Ted Huser. Yeah. Thank you.
Yes. Yes. The giveaway was, just so you know, was a signed copy of Ted, copy of Ted Kuzer's Valentine's, and with a book plate. So thank you to the Olympia Poetry Network for helping organize that. The University of Nebraska Press donated the Ted Kuzer books. We were able to give each member who read of the Laureate Love Fest a signed copy of Ted's book, Valentine's, and one winner from one winner from our registration list, and it was Kate. We were so happy. Well, I go from one Kate to another Kate. I am so thrilled to welcome Kate Flaherty to read today.
Hello, I'm coming to you from Dorchester, Massachusetts. I wandered into this poetry reading through a Facebook page of the Cool People Night People, and I didn't know what I was getting into. However, the poem I'm going to read is not too long, might be familiar to Bill Nevins and Teresa Gallion. I lived in New Mexico for 20 years, and that's where this poem actually takes place. It's called Trinity Site, And some of you may know what the Trinity site is. It's where they set off the first experimental atom bomb in July of 1945. It was named by the head of the Manhattan Project out of Los Alamos. Okay, Trinity site. Silence has reclaimed the desert. Only a chain link fence separates the site from the rest of the desert scene. The Sacramento Mountains rise to the east. Juniper and sage dot the sand. All that remains of the iron tower that rose 100 feet in the air is one twisted 3-foot leg. The green glass has been bulldozed under a wooden platform. Rain on the flat, clear panels obscures the telltale glass. The military men who ran the dozers died. The mushroom cloud of that long ago July morning floated obscenely away. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kate Flaherty, and we look forward to the next time you join us. A real pleasure to have you as a member. Thank you.
Thank you. Pleasure.
Our next poet is Anna Jordan, joining us from Waterford, Ireland, and who read with us a number of times in the live open mic. And just a fun fact, like you can sometimes catch Anna also singing and playing the guitar on a late night if you're lucky, on YouTube or Facebook. So would you please welcome Anna Jordan?
Oh, thank you so much, Sandy. Thank you so much. This is the first open mic, and probably the only open mic that I've done at all. I came on, I saw Fergus's head one night at 1:30 in the morning, and I was like, what is this? And I had to join in. But it's been really good because it's fairly dismal in Ireland for the past 4 or 5 months. So it's really nice to see new heads and to have this platform, because it really does, it is such a lovely thing. So well done to you and all the team anyway. Well done, hands together. Okay, I'm going to read a piece called Love Letter Number 2. Okay. Whatever way you are today, that is who I adore. It's been an obvious detail that you begin to unwind from me, detach, seek all things other, that you have discovered that really I'm boring, unwhoring, because I will never whore, a trait of myself that I often despise, unable to just freely sleep and leave, disguise myself as unwise, so prim and proper, and as the tick-tocker of life goes on, I'm often alone. But you'd be my only exception, creep out with light underneath my feet, and be a flaw that is fine. In all of our hours of all of our years, you'd be the only human that doesn't frighten me too much, and yet not enough. Though the thought of your absence is like a life sentence. Until there was you, all was so dull, burying myself in the hulls of my mental behavior, no savior to tell me to breathe in and out, and in and out, and to breathe out entirely. Just let go. Your smell, the hells of what you could put me through with your ever-changing you. Love and hate and everything in between would be nothing on the desire that you could ignite despite all my fear. No tear could ever try balance that you have me breathe out entirely. But the obvious detail, your unwind, and now I can't exhale. Thank you.
Oh, breathtaking. Anna Jordan, breathtaking. Thank you. When things open back up sometime in the future, I'd like to come over and host a live open mic from Jordan's American Bar, if that's possible. Okay, let's do it. All right, so in the future, folks, we'll be joining you from Waterford, Ireland on Cultivating Voices Live Poetry. But for now, we're back here. We're back here in our Zoom screens. And right here, right down the road, somewhere here in Olympia, Washington, is my good friend, Thomas A. Thomas, who, when we're not shut in, we meet up once a month down at Traditions here in Olympia, Washington. He's read a number of times with us, and it's always a pleasure to hear Thomas A. Thomas. Thank you. I'm so glad you're here today. Thank you so much.
I couldn't miss it, Sandy. Our versiversary. I think I've been here since the second one at least. The first one, okay. Maybe not quite the attendance award, but I want to read a short poem, but it wouldn't have happened without Cultivating Voices and Poets on the Coast and new friends that I've met here. I mean, rather than my world shrinking during the COVID era, it has expanded, and I'm eternally grateful for that. But I'll just say, instead of God, say heron, say kingfisher, say that was the 10th summer my wife was dying and I was not. Instead of God, say a name like Anne or Grace or Joy. Say the one who broke me open in a new way this wholly unexpected time. Instead of God, say love. Let joy in the side door, and she sits in the kitchen now in warmth of fresh bread and cinnamon and honey. Instead of God, say only desire, want. Say pomegranate, poplar tree. Say stay, say please, say thank you, say love again, dark and light and forever.
Thank you so much. What a poem, what a poem. I'll see you soon, somewhere in Olympia. I look forward to that. Well, our next poet is Anne McDonald, who joined us many a time this past year and just launched her new collection, Crow's Books. Welcome, Anne. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much, Sandy, and happy birthday, anniversary, birthday. And apart from connecting all of us Irish poets with poets in the US, I just want you to know that I'm meeting poets in Ireland that I would never meet if it wasn't for Cultivating Voices. So I think we should just petition the Irish government for a passport for Sandy and have done with it. And maybe a position in the Dáil. I don't know. But huge thank you to you. And tonight I'm just going to read a poem. I've been working with a fabulous poet in New Hampshire called Barbara Bald for the last 10 days. And we've been working on a collaboration because the world is full of shit and miserable at the moment. We've been working on a collaboration that every day, and I'm delighted Fergus has his good aftershave on. Sorry, that's an in-joke. We've got this collaboration going where we literally decided to write a poem about what there is to love, because it was just getting too depressing, too many COVID numbers, too much misery. And we've written every day for about 10 days back and forth a poem without overthinking it. And this is one that I wrote, and it's having its world debut tonight at Cultivating Voices. And it's about my sister. Everybody should have a sister like I have. I know we're all not all that lucky. I have a sister, Sandra, who has been unbelievably supportive of us as a family over what has been an unbelievably shit year. And this is called A Gifted Teapot. I want to give you something to say thank you. But the gift is way beyond the bottle of drugstore wine or a bunch of flowers. And there's nothing I can give that can recognize the hours and hours you put in to help me cross this threshold. I know that all you did was as much for her as for me and you and us, and mostly from a sense of fairness, but it was not easy. You put your heart in the line of fire, and I know you've spent many sleepless nights as I did. So I wanted to find the right gift. And I trawled the online malls, looking at the cards and handcrafted ornaments. And then I realized it was the gift of drinking tea together we missed the most when Mum got sick. The endless talk and cakes and foods and schemes to lose weight and make money, and what was funny about the latest gossip, and leaving this house in the evening with a bag of food or slips of plants or charity shop clothes picked for the kids with love. You fought my corner, and in doing so, brought back her space, her dream, her rightful place at this, now, my table. I wanted to give you a gift, and then I realized that you and her are one, and that we also love talk and tea and cakes and gossip and ways to lose weight and make money and funny stories about the neighbours. And all your labours have now come to fruit as I sit now on what is now my table, where you come to sit. You have her strength, and in your eyes, well rimmed with tears, I saw her smile when I gifted you a teapot. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne, for debuting that poem with us. Having just left my family yesterday, it's quite moving to me to hear that poem today. We'll see you soon. Well, next, I'm so glad that John Carew could be with us today, because if you ever saw the performances that John gave in the early weeks of Cultivating Voices live poetry, you will know undisputably why I'm so thrilled that he could make it to our Versiversary reading. I love that, Versiversary. It's so good reading today. John Carew, thank you. I'm just so honored by your presence today. So.
Hi, Sandy, and hello to my fellow poets from all over the world, wherever you're from. And congratulations on the first anniversary of Cultivating Voices. I must tell you that it's dark, windy and wet outside here in Ireland at the moment. So I think it's safe enough to introduce you to a little bit of love and lust, passion and desire. So here we go. Go handy, girls. Handy now. All ye young lovers, take heed and listen well to the story I must tell of battles fiercely fought for love and lust, passion and desire. Of a Viking queen with eyes of emerald green, our battle cry striking fear into the hearts of every man, as we plunder and pillage to gratify our lust for love. The Kaiser's daughter, an Eastern beauty, royal blood pulsing through her veins, of a lowly warrior that would dare to share her bed, his bones left cleansed and whitened by a Siberian wind. The Yannone River chills his lusty passions. The emperor's daughter an Eastern beauty. Sorry now, I got that wrong. An Oriental princess, an Eastern beauty. Steamy nights of passion, betrayed by the traitor's dagger. Temptress of the Nile, seductive and alluring, lays mummified beneath the pyramids, or Egyptian Viking left with no desire to live. African goddess, skin of black silk, skin of, my head is gone, sorry. Bewitched and spellbound by the sight of her voluptuousness, enslaved to the chains of bondage, her cries for freedom to be heard for 1,000 years. My Comanche squaw, wild and free, riding bareback o'er the plains, chasing the elusive white buffalo of love, her Cupid's arrow straight through my soul. A Parisian charm, my French maiden, a love of fire and desire, separated by the swish of the guillotine blade. So all ye young lovers who have listened well to the story I had to tell, your love is as fleeting a thing as the cherry blossoms in spring, where I had no beginning and will have no end. For I am love and lust, passion and desire. Thank you very much.
There is nothing wrong with a little love and lust at Cultivating Voices live poetry.
Well, here in Ireland, we don't care whether it's dark or bright, whether the sun is shining or the rain is falling. We always like a little bit of love and lust, passion and desire. And of course, a little drop with it doesn't go astray.
Indeed, indeed.
Good night.
Thank you. Good night. Thank you so much. Well, next, following John, is another poet that, again, always a joy to hear his stories when he shares the work with us, and another perennial member of that Not the Time to Be Silent crowd that gathered on Thursdays. Please welcome Matt Mooney.
Now, Sandy, good evening. And after your introduction, I have to do the best I can. As John B would say, give it your best, your almighty best. The poem I'm going to read is called Stardust. And a bit like John, it's about the greats of the past. And in this case, it's mythological. We have our own mythology, but we call it we call the stories legends. And this is the legend based on the legend of Finn McCool, and a particular story of Oisin, who was with Sean, his father, in Killarney, and they were hunting, and they came across a most beautiful young lady who came on the scene. She was Neve with golden hair, and she put a kind of a spell on him, and he fell in love with her, and she said, I'm going to take you to the land of youth. And she took him to the land of youth. Then he was there for 300 years, but he got a bit lonesome for home, and he came back, and he was told before he went by Neve and by his advisors, no, you're on this horse, and this steed, but don't dismount. If you dismount, you will be an old man. And he said, I'll do that. So he came back to Ireland, and when he came to Ireland, he saw men trying to lift a rock off the ground, trying to move a rock. And of course, the Fianna were giants, the men were strong as could be. So he said, I got to give them a hand. So he went to bend down to lift the rock just with one hand, and the girth broke at the saddle. So he fell down and he became an old man. So that's the story of Oisin and Tiernan. Tiernan means the land of youth, and I'm going to read the poem now, so you'll know what it means when I come to it. Stardust. I have fallen off the horse I had in the land of youth, where daydreams belong to the ready and the strong. A story of rarely brushing while on borrowed time. You spiraled out of sight, lost in a shower of stardust. I should have known better, but on a Sunday afternoon, I was silently spirited away on a lengthy flight of fancy, looking and listening to you, singing in a summer garden, slowly fueling my liftoff, charming me to Tiernan. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Matt Mooney. I look forward always to hearing you, always.
And congrats on the year and the day, as to say, a great, great year of poetry from transatlantic poetry, wonderful trans-world international. Thank you very much. And Kim and Elizabeth and Don.
Thank you, and may we all enjoy the next year coming up, as we're already in that year.
Yeah, and next there is a saying, may we all be alive this time next year. And in Irish, it is an old Shannock, an old saying, go Maramid Bio, which means alive, on Tom Shorish, again, this time next year. Go Maramid Bio on Tom Shorish.
Thank you. Folks, again, you know, this is Cultivating Voices live poetry at its best today. Hearing all the different voices. We have a few more here in on the list, and I'm inclined to go to the wait list, folks. So just those of you on the wait list, you can know that I'll be coming after you on the wait list, because I'm going to let it keep going. Next, I'm so glad to have Max Vandersteen here. Welcome, Max. Thanks again for coming today.
Thank you, Sandy.
Thank you, Sandy. Thank you. And happy birth anniversary to Cultivating Voices. Thanks to Sandy and Kim for making this last year so special on Sunday afternoons here in Alberta, Canada. So it's kind of an anniversary for this poem I'd like to read this afternoon too. It was 1 year ago that I won an honorable mention for this poem in Dr. William Henry Drummond Poetry Contest, who was a very fine poet back in Canada in the late 19th century. And there's a poetry contest out of Ontario named in his honor. So this poem I'd like to read is called What Do We Lose? Where do we arrive when tyrants, autocrats, demons, and dominions of partisans control and contrive neighbors to take up their sabers for misguided allegiance to false icons and regents of avarice, revenge, and self-gain? In what do we trust when moguls, magnates, aristocrats, and scions of wealth manipulate and mandate merchandised agronomies and intangible economies, while civilians and credulous citizens profit not from the fallacies? What do we believe when clerics, deacons, imams, and ministers of faith belie and beget sons who throw down their rattles and pick up guns to join in moot battles, while their daughters suffer the slaughters of torture, torpor, and inconsequence? How will we then live when field, forest, food, and descendants of folks effuse every contaminant of an abused environment, conquested thus helter-skelter. On earth, solace now the only shelter from mistrust, misuse, and sufferance. What do we gain when still we want more? And what do we lose when still we ignore? Thank you all.
Thank you so much, Max. And again, I've been, congratulations on your versiversary of that poem.
Thank you.
And we really appreciate our friends, for me, from the North in Canada. Thank you. Well, next, I'm so happy that Mia Hansford's able to join us here today. Mia and I go way back because we actually went to college together and we're in the same class, our first year of college, called Writing About Women. So and she read very early on too in those first few weeks. It's a great, great joy to have you here today.
Thank you, Sandy. That was Sheila Shaw. We read Doris Lessing, Sylvia, bunch of good ones. Yeah. I've been going through some old poems and they're from when I lived in New York and first started writing, and they're very obtuse. But I'm gonna torture you with one that I found. It's pretty short. I have two, but I know we need to stick to one. From the deck. It's like pull from the deck. Snail fair, the year when the tiny black chair and the cornered mule ear of the winged rumple man task their man months to nurture and heal. That dunst needle gaze plains a cave spring thirst to sidestep and stumble latticed coal and coke. The queen of swords leads her butcher to supper. In the dark tuned sky, they climb the hot heel and iron the air. The blows come in threes and cross the noon schism to summer the East River shields. Remembering water rings hard on the A, a minor indented, vast, sharp breath. Pummel and push the black abyss joy. Creak a difficult wren to lark and farce the night noon. The fading gales of the smiled hanging man, his many heads poke through the sea. Thanks for letting me read that, y'all.
Thank you. And I'll see you sometime. It's our like 40th, it's like our 35th college reunion this May.
I know.
Just FYI.
Not happening.
Yeah. No, maybe virtually, but okay. Thank you. Well, next is Marian Lovett. Marian Lovett has been a perennial, just stalwart, staunch, reliable, every week, chop wood, carry water, come to Cultivating Voices live poetry. And right behind me, right over here, no, I can't do this. I'm right over here, was a gift I received, holiday Christmas gift, Van Bolen's final collection, The Historians. I just brought it back with me because I couldn't send it ahead. I had to have it with me. That Marian gave to me. I'm so very grateful to have the collection, and obviously it holds a very, very special place in my heart, as does the memory of the day we met, and of course every time you've joined us here. From Sligo, Marian Lovett.
Oh, Sandy, well, the privilege is all mine, I assure you. And certainly for me, like so many others, I think Cultivating Voices has been a lifeline in the last year. So my poem is called The New Minimalism, and I wrote it because, well, COVID times has meant that I guess we've all had to embrace minimalism in many ways. And well, the COVID funeral is no exception, and my poem is about that. The funeral was minimal, just the 7 of us, plus 3 cousins socially distanced across 4 pews, lost in the vast expanse of a cathedral that can easily hold 1,000. The funeral was minimal, pared down to bare essentials. She'd said, no flowers, no fuss, no photographs. The coffin was plain, unvarnished oak, the lining beige, raw linen, no frills, no shiny nameplate, no ornate handles made of brass. The funeral was minimal, but those who cared enough turned out to greet the cortege, if you could call it that. Just 2 cars plus a hearse. Her neighbors stood outside the house where she'd lived in most of her married life. They lined the streets all the way up the town as far as the black railings that led to the cathedral steps. The funeral was minimal. She'd said no eulogy, but the sermon sufficed. It was vivid and precise, said by an out-of-towner who'd known her for 30 years since they'd met on pilgrimage. It suited her to ship him in, a 1 in the eye for the local padres, since in her later years she realized the church was full of sin, her own parish even, riven by users and abusers, and she'd made her feelings known. The funeral was minimal, but the music was glorious, was what she'd chosen, a curated selection. And as the last song played, the swelling refrain of Andrea Bocelli's Time to, light streamed through the blue and green glass windows in the upper Clare story. The funeral was minimal. At the burial, a handful showed up for her, as she'd have done for them, all masked, no hugs or kisses, some elbow touches. A few related what she'd said the last time that they'd met. There were laughs about how outspoken she could be. And I remembered then the time she'd rung me and said, his paintings are in the shed. No interest in their worth. They were always at loggerheads. He'd laughed it off and said, she was never so easily impressed, my mother. Well, now she's gone, no speaking ill. Instead that day, we did everything the way she wanted. The funeral was minimal, but the service was televised, and several who couldn't come tuned into it online. Across the country and beyond, candles were lit and tears were shed for a woman who thought herself inconsequential. The funeral was minimal, and as we walked, the coffin down the middle aisle, from her flat in London, Lilley pressed one hand to the TV screen and waved her grand goodbye. And with that touch, the screen froze. Love fused and crackled, soared, and made its way across the March gray sky. We felt its voltage in the sun that briefly shone on us as the wooden box was lowered into deep, dark earth. So there you are. That's for my mother-in-law, Maeve, who passed away on International Women's Day. What a great day to go. Thanks, guys. As I said, I feel I'm amongst friends. Lovely meeting so many of you this year.
Thank you so much. You know, I tell my students that joy and grief are always holding hands. They hold hands.
And poetry is such a solace, as we all know.
As we all know, every week we've attended to so much. We've attended to lots of grief during every week. We saw it and amplified in different ways, and it's a very good reminder as to why we came together to begin with, is, you know, to give us some solace, some relief from the known and the unknowns of the pandemic. I send you my condolences to your family, and but what a legacy. What a legacy. Thank you for sharing that poem
Thank
today.
you. Great to be here. And happy birthday, Cultivating Voices, once again. Oh.
Well, I love how the poetry, I love how the poetry gods and goddesses do their work, their magic, because I happen to know that Marian and our next poet became friends through Cultivating Voices Live. I kind of watched it happen on the chat, like they made a bond. Our next poet is Gary Lilley. Gary Copeland Lilley needs no introduction from me. And I'm always, always deeply grateful when he joins us here. His work is astounding. And again, I'm so glad you're here today to hear this incredible array of poetry. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Sandy. I just want to say, like, Cultivating Voices is what a year. It's a good way to spend a lockdown and stuff, you know, that we're writing poems and we're meeting other poets and stuff. It's just so wonderful. And yeah, and that's, yeah, we do find a community here, and thank you for that. I'm not going to talk too long about this. And thank you too, Marian, for this poem that you did. I'm glad to be reading here. And I'm going to read a poem that I've probably been working on since I first kind of broke it into this set. So this poem is Instructions to Avoid Drowning. Victims are always nostalgia-free. The pressure of race is like water in the lungs, a cardiac arrest, an immutable mute correlation, the leftover recollection of counter reaction rolled into the slant of the eye. The expected clicks and stammers, a skipping needle on the cracked vinyl. Everyone who was around remembers me as a child who stuttered like Moses before his salvation walk into the Red Sea. He clearly calling Pharaoh's name. And when my angel does appear with his marks and scars, I bet you the first words he says will be, "Do not be afraid." He will be armed with the well-used jawbone of an ass, roll away the stone and their radio static. Straight is the gate and wide is the road to destruction. Yes, Jesus wept his parable of running out of gas in Enid, Oklahoma. The redneck militia in their jacked up pickup trucks on parade, coming across country by the southern route. The stars and bars, the banner of the red-hatted killers. Hear their singing, the cloak of their gun-toting choir, and run to the water. Deep water has always had the race drama. Hold your head up, but do not mistakenly think you are ever going to be safe, as in on dry land. Thank you.
Gary Lilley, my friends, always astounding. Thank you so much. Well, folks, I'm going to the waiting list. I'm doing it. Stay with us. There's 8 more readers. It's 24 minutes, and if I keep my comments to a minimum, we can do it. So next up we have Susan Abbott. Thank you so much for being here today. Cultivating Voices Live, Poetry Open Mic on the open mic. We've made it to the waiting list. Welcome.
Hello.
Yep, you're good. Oh, you need to unmute again.
All right, we good?
There you go. There you go.
We got the video? Cool. All right. Thank you. I'm really thrilled to be here. I just met you guys in January, so I'm kind of a latecomer to this party, but I am thrilled. Yes, and Gary, a great place to spend lockdown time. And I've been just this week experimenting with some forms, one the Villanelle, and so I want to share that with you. This one is also in honor of Passover, and my mother, her name was Miriam, and this is called Miriam's Daughter. And those of you, I'm sure you're familiar with villanelles. There's a lot of repetition in them, so it's pretty straightforward. I'm coming to you from Joshua Tree, California, and that's in the desert, about 3 hours east of Los Angeles. So I have, Miriam's Daughter. Across the desert, a monsoon spills its water, torrents of rain in the washes flood. This is the prophet Miriam's daughter, witness to killings, the genocidal slaughter, the stolen lands, the indigenous blood. Across the desert, a monsoon spills its water. Plant medicine, Mother Nature has taught her to repair the world for the common good. This is the prophet Miriam's daughter. To those who made jokes or would mock or taunt her, she is the drink to the thirsty, the spark to the wood. Across the desert, the monsoon spills its water. And out of this storm, the new seeds it brought her, a generous crop, a sustaining food. This is the prophet's Miriam's daughter. Clouds will pass over like locusts and plagues. Let the earth mix with water and give us its mud. Across the desert, the monsoon spills its water. This is the prophet Miriam's daughter. Thank you. Thank you, thank you.
Bravo, brava, Susan Abbott, for that villanelle. Truly, great debut. Come back soon. I'm going to move now to another one of my Olympia neighbors. If you live in Olympia, there she is. She's a queen, goddess of poetry to me. Fantastic.
Sandy. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can. So great to see you.
Good to see you too. This has been a lovely show. I've been debating if I should stick with the spiritual theme or go with something different. So I'm going to stick with the spiritual theme and throw my 2 cents in as well. This poem is called One, and it started me on my journey as a performance poet. So I hope you enjoy it. We do not need 10 commandments, just this, one truth. There are no divisions. We are one. Mind, body, soul, life, planet, just one. So this is my plea, this is my cry. If you do not understand, I cannot tell you why. It is the ground under my feet and my eye in the skies. I am one. When you see your brothers and sisters and you say, hey, how you doing? Are you good? Remember, we are one. We all need something. Like the truth in the center of all the spokes in a wheel, surrounded in hope and love, I honestly see we are one. Preacher and sinner, one. Cops, robbers, judges, prisoners, one. Dealers, addicts, bloods, crips, hoes, and pimps, one. Black, white, brown, yellow, and red, gay, straight, queer, square, we are all eating from the same plate and sleeping in one bed. When we think of each other instead of fear, accept each other as one. When you see a sick puppy or a wolf pack on the attack, why stay back? Can't you see? We are in one condition and behave as one. Look at us and yourself in the mirror, because everything is one. There are no enemies in one. There are no fences, cells, prisons, walls. They are a dream, an illusion, because we are one. I am one. You are one person with one perspective, born with one will and tongue at one time, from one mother, just one. If you seek the truth, then you are one. If we'd all love our enemies, I guess there would be none. Are you one? There are no enemies in one. Mind, body, soul, life, planet, just one. We are one, Christian, Muslim, Jew. Animist, humanist, atheist, Hindu, pagan, Wiccan, Zen, Buddhist too. Agnostics are ahead of me here. Y'all knew there might be one. And here it is because we are one, seeking truth, wisdom, and honesty, understanding, acceptance, and forgiveness, praying, meditating, and debating who has the best answer, how to attain nirvana. Will I be accepted into heaven? Are we really separated by how we love people? What are we arguing about? Whatever it is, I am sure of this. The answer is we are one. Like one truth in the center of all the spokes in a wheel, surrounded in hope and love. I honestly see we are one. Thank you. Oh, that's from Universal State of Mind. And you can find that poem on The Second Coming of Matriarchy on Bandcamp. My next poetry album, Crazy Thunder Medicine, will be out soon this year. Thank you.
Come join us. Thank you. I love that book. I own that book.
Thank you.
I have it in my collection. Folks, you want
I love books for women.
Order that book, put it in the chat.
Yes, I will.
We'll see you soon. I'll see you soon. That's Lennee Reid, and Lennee joined us in our Votes for Women reading. My sister here in Olympia, much love. See you soon. And we move forward here in the open mic, making it onto the waiting list. Folks, this person needs no introduction. And if I start to talk about him at this moment, I will probably start crying. So I'm going to just say, please welcome Don Krieger.
Thanks, Sandy. Thanks, everyone. It's been an extraordinary reading. Lot's wife died nameless, not for looking back, but for remembering. A young white man killed 8 last week to save himself from temptation. 7 were women: Hyun Jung Grant, Sun Cha Kim, Young Ai Yue, Jiao Ji Tan, Sun Chung Park, Dai Yu Feng, Paul Andre Michel, and Delana Ashley Yon. Delana and Mario Gonzalez were newlyweds taking a massage. He was held in handcuffs 4 hours by the police. No place for hate. We shopped today at the Pious Bookshop, bought Seder plates for the kids, packed in a fresh pizza box with secondhand bubble wrap. Passover is this weekend. They had fridge magnets, stickers, skull caps with slogans. We are stronger together and no place for hate. As if it was this morning. I remembered passing security for the funeral. The line blocks long down Darlington Road. 11 Reconstructionists killed at the Tree of Life. I longed for the pious to be with us together down Darlington Road and at the cemetery later. Their beards, black coats, and sit-sit, but none came. As if they think you're not pious, you're not a Jew. As if it matters that the murdered are. As if it matters we are stronger together and no place for hate.
Thank you so much. I let Don Krieger, you know that we couldn't do Cultivating Voices live poetry without you. It's true. It's absolutely true. And I always am, it's so important for me to always remind everybody that, you know, Don is an exceptional, exceptional poet. Speaking Truth to Power. And please check out his book that he read in a new book showcase with us, Discovery. Yes, please do. Thank you. Well, next we move to, we're probably just going to go a little over the top of the hour here. And you know me, I'm okay with that because I'm always okay with that. But next, so we're down to our final five. Our final five. Our first of our final five is Muriel Nelson. Welcome and thank you so much for being with us here today on our Versaversary.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me? Yeah, okay. I'm a graduate from just a few years ago of Olympia High School. Do you still have Olympia High School? William Winlock Miller? Okay, and I live just north in Federal Way. This is my book about to be born in the next few days. Chapbook called Please Hold. It's kind of a, I don't know, not really a chronicle, but it was written during last year mostly, or the theme, the underlying condition was a pandemic. And this poem is called Rumors of Fun Fact. Roofs are steaming like beekeepers' smokers, or a roof is burning while bees smoke. Plum petals fall so snowingly that rain doesn't show. And my old foe Photinia votes again for the Red Party, blocking out windows with leaflets. It's peaceful though, isn't it? The president's people say everyone knows whatever they claim today. Now they say the president's making good on one of his threats. Others say a mustache is making war. It's shady business, so here come the pines, where there's just enough room for a chair between our old rhododendron and new burning bush, if you'd care to sit as crowds reenact Exodus and sicken. The air is as still as on 9/11, the bees so calm you can hold a tasting in the bloom by your arm, but not a loved one nearby. Or watch an ant rick-racking rough wood while it climbs an inch or two, as if could take us anywhere, as if bees weren't endangered, as if there were no drought coming, no virus, and no threat of smoke in the still air, as if this too early warmth with its plain blue sky, green burning bush, and huge gentle blossoms were normal, were good.
Wow. Wow. Congratulations. Brava on
Thanks.
your upcoming new collection. Contact me. We'll get you on for a new book showcase.
Sure.
That's what it's all about here. Beautiful to have you joining us here.
Thanks. I've enjoyed it a lot. Thank you.
Rather local. Thank you. Well, next is a person, again, a person not a stranger to Cultivating Voices live poetry from the very early days on that wild ride that was the live Facebook open mic. Would you please welcome from Calgary, Josephine LoRe.
Thanks, Sandy. Thank you. When I came into the room today and I looked around at all these familiar faces, it felt like a homecoming. So thank you, Sandy and Beth and Kim and Dawn for creating this. The poem is fairly new. I'm going to read it from my computer screen. And it was born from learning that there's a spark of light at the moment, a flash of light when the sperm meets an egg. So I call it Inception. I knew. I walked from the bed to the bathroom and knew a life inside my life, a spark within my spark, a flash. Infinitesimal, then the size of flaxseed waving blue in summer breeze, hazelnut in shatterproof shell, apricot, fuzz-covered flesh yielding to touch, grapefruit, sunshine bursting into scent. And within me, bubbles gently bursting, weeks before movement, weeks before the first real kick, as unforgettable as the first real kiss. All this
Ooh, it appears that Josephine's feed has frozen. Wow, she's like ended like right on a line. We'll come back if her feed returns so she can finish the poem. It was already beautiful. Thank you so much, Josephine. Try to come back and you'll be back anyway. So thank you. Much love for all the readings that you and all the poetry and community that you have helped us foster over these past however many weeks it's been. Well, next we go to Anchorage to a poet I've just met at a wonderful series, the Poetry Parlay. I just heard an astounding reading from Ray Ball, where Ray also ushered in a wonderful feature.
Ray,
go ahead.
Ray had to leave. She's not going to be able to read, unfortunately.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Thank you. I'm so sorry. Well, let me just say this about Ray Ball. Ray Ball will be back with us for a new book showcase, I'm sure. And Ray Ball from Anchorage hosted through the Poetry Parlay. Her poet of influence was Yvonne Boland a few weeks ago. It was a great reading. I'm sorry we didn't get to her in the open mic today. Well, next, if I'm trying to pay attention to the chat, Kim is helping us out. Next up is Jeff Kaliss, and Jeff was one of those perennial members from Not the Time to Be Silent, and I'm glad you've been able to hop on over here to Cultivating Voices Live Poetry and join us here today.
Yes, thank you. I guess I'm hopscotching because some of the people, who include some of these people here today, will be going on to the Lime Square poetry thing that'll be starting next month at the same time. And I am going to keep moving in the spirit of Women's Month. I took a long walk just yesterday to pick up this, the Lit Night anthology, put out by a couple of wonderful women connected with the City College of San Francisco, which I can actually see at some distance out this window of my office. And here's my contribution, which is created to a fellow poet, a woman, Katie Spitz. We decided to do ping pong poetry back and forth, and I began it with a poem called In Play. A Sport of Spheres. 52 years ago this day, 3 good-looking, close-cut American guys took it all the way from our Earth to the moon, whose ever that is. I watched them on our TV with my first wife. I don't think you were around to watch it yet, though maybe something which would become your words was moving, murmuring out there in space, waiting on what I would be saying, what I was caring about. Here you are now on this anniversary in the game, parrying phrases with me. And here I am now in terrestrial exchange, the pair of us making our own rules for as long as we can make things. And look at you, warming up, positioning body and mind between all the things that want you, among all the things you want. You look like you want to roll away the rules and play it where and when it lays. And whatever you put on or take off, You wear your uniform of playfulness. You fasten on that smile and giggle to follow your volleys of wistful words. Suited up so. Are you playing for us? Are you playing to us? Are you playing to play? You don't have to answer. You don't have to choose. And you knew that I knew that I didn't have to ask. I'm just passing to you something that you can play with. Thank you all very much and happy birth-anniversary.
Thank you so much, Jeff. And we look forward to having you with us more on Cultivating Voices Live Poetry. And I look forward to seeing you at Lime Square on Thursdays as well. And you know, I want to give a shout out actually to Siobhan Potter and Dor Cipher, who were the hosts of Not the Time to Be Silent, that just ended its 1 year of extraordinary poetry on Thursdays. And they said, we've done it for a year and we're moving on to other things. And I want to just give a shout out to them because they really were that beacon for me to follow. They had started just about a week before we had started, and I really always looked to them. So I wanted to give them some kudos and congratulations on what an extraordinary series they put together for this past year, weekly, every single week. Well, our final poet before I come back, and I think I'll throw one in for good measure and share some closing remarks with you, is a poet. I believe Fergus Hogan's first reading was maybe our second or third week. Oh, sorry. Excuse me. Before I have Fergus, Josephine, have you come back into the room?
Sorry about that. My internet dropped.
No worries.
Okay.
I want to honor. Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Inception. I knew. I walked from the bed to the bathroom and knew. A life inside my life, a spark within my spark, a flash. Infinitesimal, then the size of flaxseed, weaving blue in summer breeze. Hazelnuts in shatterproof shell. Apricots, fuzz-covered flesh yielding to touch. Grapefruit, sunshine bursting into scent. And within me, bubbles, gently bursting, weeks before movement, weeks before the first real kick, as unforgettable as the first real kiss. All this before anyone else knew. I knew, as intimately as you knew, the beating of my heart keeping silent time until you would be ready to come forth into light. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Josephine. It has been a pleasure this year sharing poetry with you and hearing your wonderful work and your fabulous voice and the humanity that you bring to this group. Thank you so much. And I'll see you on Wednesday. Next, our final reader today is Fergus Hogan. And as I was saying, Fergus was one of those early readers. And I will never forget when Fergus came onto the screen. And I'm so grateful that he's remained with us through this journey. He's provided these amazing anchor and touchstones for us all through the pandemic. And I will stop there with gratitude and love to you, my brother. Thanks for being here.
Sandy. Agus a cara, I've been accused the last couple of weeks of blowing kisses on Zoom rooms too often. So these are kisses to you all, but they're also our sign language for thank you. So when we do it in two parts, we speak together in our global world of signs. So thank you, Sandy. I have 3 minutes, brothers and sisters, in our family. And those of you that are patient with me, you know, 3 minutes don't suit my soul. So I've got to get a move on. So you need to set your GPS signals to Waterford, Ireland. Anna Jordan and myself are inviting each and every one of you to Waterford for our gathering. And we are all, once we are safe and free and able to travel and hug and kiss and read poetry aloud and wear good aftershave and perfume, we are gathering together, our friends. So we need for a party to make a promise. So that's the promise, that's the plan, a party together. We also need to say a prayer and we also need to sing a song. So in the 2.5 minutes that's left, I want to say a prayer for us, our brothers and sisters together across the world. This year where we've been locked down and staying home and trying to stay safe, we've witnessed the world being split and divided and separated and beautiful people killed on our streets. And Cultivating Voices, Sandy, you've held us together in all of our differences and our broken beauty. We thank you. You're our big sister and we love you. So the prayer tonight, lads and friends, it's a plagiarized prayer poem and you were all in it. And I apologize if I have misquoted or done an injustice to your beautiful words. And don't forget, friends, after this prayer poem, we have a song. Telling the bees. The bees fly low this year, weighed down with worry and grief, insecticides, global warming, COVID-19. Each morning I go to the garden, I knock on the hive and hum for the bees the way the bee shaman showed me. Each day I read the numbers. I tell the bees the names of loved ones passed in the night. I put the bees into mourning. Kneeling before their altar of honey, I pray to the goddess Gubnut. Take this cup away from us. Please let it stop. May the bees carry our grief between these worlds, light as gossamer wings. Let's light a candle together, friends. As our first poet brother tonight said, let's light a candle for our fathers and our future, our mothers, our sisters, our brothers. As Bill Nevins says, let's say we all fly free. As Teresa Gallion says, I want to hold truth in my hands and feel you melt in love. And as Janet says, I am not alone. As Sven says, facing a masterpiece of solitude. As kindly Kate, our sister, says, out towards the now northwest facing foothills, the threshold of marigolds, spring sings. As Kate Foley says, juniper and sage dot the sand. As Anna Jordan says, the thoughts of your absence in this life is a life sentence. Breathe in, breathe out, let go entirely. Thomas, our brother, instead of saying God, say the one who broke me open a new way in this unholy, unexpected time. Anne McDonald, our sister, but there is nothing I can give to recognize the hours and hours you gave to cross this threshold. It's a cup of tea we miss this night together with you. John, be warned, all ye young lovers take heed of love and lust and passion and desire. Steamy nights of passion may betray us all. Matt Mooney, our mentor, I have fallen off the horse too. I had in the land of eternal youth, tá tír na nógar cúl an tí, tír all in trí and a céile. You spiraled out of sight. You shine this night, Matt Mooney, in a sky of stars. Max, how will we live in an abused environment? What will we gain? What still more? What do we lose? Mia Hansford asks us to nurture and heal, to sidestep and stumble. The blows, my friends, they come in three. No flowers, no fuss, no photographs. Marian Lovett from Sligo, our sister, reminds us the funeral was minimal, pared down to bare essentials. But those, my friends who cared, turned up, all masked, no hugs or kisses. Gary, our brother, when our angel does appear, she or he will say or do, say, do not be afraid, hold your head up, but do not be mistaken. The promise of race is like water in our lungs. Susan, across the desert, a monsoon spills its water. This is the prophet, Miriam's daughter. She is the drink for the thirsty across the desert, a generous crop. Leanne, we do not need 10 commandments, friends, just this one truth. We, in Cultivating Voices, are one. Brothers and sisters, we all need each other. We are all, if we all loved our enemies, I guess there'd be no one else. Don, we thank you for all you've done this year for us. Lot's wife died nameless, not for looking back, but for remembering. Friends, the prayer. Let's take a silent moment, shared together in love. Let's say the names in our heart of those we've loved and lost and let go. Let's say their names. Let's say their names. We are stronger together and no place for hate. Muriel, our roof is burning while bees smoke, and the bees are so calm, as if the bees were in no danger, but they are. As if, Josephine, as if. But you knew. You walked from the bedroom to the bathroom, a new life in your womb. A new spark, a light, sunrise bursts into sense, a kiss, all of this. Jeff, all the things you want, all the things we want, we don't have to answer. We don't have to choose. You don't even have to ask. And now, my friends, as if we weren't out of time already, can I ask you to unmute together and we'll sing the global song. And it's for us. And I wish Sandy wouldn't keep changing the name. It's our birthday, it's our anniversary, it's our versary, but it's our happy birthday song. So we're going to sing this tonight together for Sandy, for her sister Elizabeth Ann, for her mom and dad who have been with us in our hearts, for Don, and for Kim. Happy Happy birthday to us. Happy birthday to us. Happy birthday. Happy birthday to us.
And many more.
Thank you.
Thank
Oh
you.
my gosh. What a perfect way to close out the reading. If you will indulge, I will read one final poem. But I love that cento, that braiding of everyone's voice. Thank you to all the poets in our birthday, anniversary, versiversary open mic. I'm gonna say all their names because I have to. I mean, it's important. Shaswata Gangopadhyay, Bill Nevins, Teresa Gallion, Janet MacFadyen, Kate Wegrzyn, Sven Kretzschmar, Kate Flaherty, Anna Jordan, Thomas A. Thomas, Ann McDonald, John Carew, Matt Mooney, Max Vandersteen, Mia Hanford, Marian Lovett, Gary Lilley, Susan Abbott, Lennee Reid, Don Krieger, Muriel Nelson, Josephine LoRe, Jeff Kaliss, and Fergus Hogan. And all the names of all the other poets who have read on Cultivating Voices in this past year, our love and gratitude to you. I'm going, and to our new book showcase poets today. A mere 3+ hours ago, we heard from Ann Tweedy, Michelle Parker Randall, Atracta Fahy, and Debbie Bacharach. Thank you all for being here today. Here's to our next year, and here's a final poem. And this is dedicated to all of you for being here in this extraordinary year full of extraordinary things, joy and grief always holding hands. This is a poem from Boats for Women called Manifesta. These are declarations of the most intimate kind, the ones you kiss into your pillow through the concentric night until you wake to feel the presence of the beloved arriving from the other room, even though she is 3 states or 11 miles away. In this moment of half-lucid dream, the distance stands before you, irrelevant as desired new boots. Alone in bed, which side to exit to the floor of today matters less. You've made the choice to turn toward a sacred face, a turn toward your own longing to live. Not so much to meet the day head on, and not so much a collision as a delicate fusion of strangers now becoming known. In this compressed space, the new feels misplaced, like keys lost for weeks. Beloveds, beloveds, beloveds. Punch your time cards, your optimism tickets, with restless tears to clock the moment you tattoo your present name to your forehead, a reminder that you'll look in the mirror with wonder each morning, see yourself, and remember that the beholder is the eye of grace. I send you all much love and gratitude and grace for all the ways that you have come together this past year. And thank you so much for joining us on this celebration today and all the Sundays this past year. Thank you so much to Don Krieger, whose work, steadfast work, has kept us going week after week after week. A shout out to my sister and co-founder, Elizabeth Ann. Here she is on her 3rd birthday, blowing out the candles. And to Kim Ports-Parsons, who has joined the team recently, although she's been a serious member since the get-go, right out of the gate, but now has joined the team and helping us with our publicity, and you know what she's doing in the chat and promoting the books. Thank you so much. A reminder to join us next week, of course, next Sunday, for the beginning of National Poetry Month with our new feature called Poets Focus. Our Poets Focus will be Bloom. Poets Focus on Bloom, where we will feature these poets: Charles Flowers, Mary Ellen Talley, Gustavo Hernandez, Kim Ports-Parsons, and Eileen Sheehan joining us from Ireland. That's Easter Sunday, April 4th, 12 noon Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern. That's 8 o'clock over across the pond in Ireland. Well, I'm feeling the glow of poetry, the warmth of love and community spirit tonight. Thank you all for being here, friends. I look forward to seeing you next week and in the weeks ahead for more poetry from around the world. I bid you adieu, farewell, safe travels, and of course, keep writing.